Hey, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Quarter Disorder Podcast. This is episode 5 of the podcast, being recorded on Friday night, February 16th, 2024. I'm your host, Tim Bowman, and joining me is my co-host, Lewis, who, much like Xbox now, is also appearing on every screen imaginable. What's up, Lewis?
Just remember, I'm only exclusive on the podcast, but I'm everywhere at the same time.
Exclusive here, but also everywhere at the same time.
Everywhere at the same time.
Make it make sense.
Yes,
but yeah, before we get into the show, we're going to be talking this week about the latest Xbox Business Update podcast that they did, going into details about the future of Xbox and addressing all the rumors and issues they've been having the past couple weeks. Before we get into that, though, just want to let everyone know how they can subscribe to the show. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We have our own YouTube page at Quarter Disorder Podcast, where full shows are uploaded with timestamps and show notes. We're also on every other podcast platform that you may use with an RSS feed, so you can plug that in and download the show. We also have social media, so if you go on to quarterdisorderpodcast.com or quarterdisorder.com, that takes you to the homepage of the website, and at the top of the website is a podcast tab where you can go into there, find all our social links. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, basically everywhere, so you can follow us on there and get updates when we upload the show. And I'm also on social media myself, too. You can follow me at timbowmanmedia.com. That's my own website where I do some writing there. And I'm also on social media. I have all my links there as well. And if you're listening to the show, giving us ratings and thumbs up on these different platforms helps us a lot. You can go on Apple and Spotify, leave us a review, leave us a star rating. And also, if you have any feedback on the show, you can email us to feedback@quarterdisorderpodcast.com or leave a comment in the show notes, which can be found on the website. Each episode of the podcast has show notes. This one will have one as well, which with all the links that we have talked about on this episode. So you can go in there, leave a comment, or email us. We really appreciate the feedback. So anything you have to say, shoot us a comment. So, Lewis, we actually made 5 episodes. Can you believe it?
I can't believe it. I'm proud of ourselves,
5 whole
actually.
episodes. We're here.
We are successful. I want to say that first, and foremost, because usually podcasts kind of die off before episode 3.
Yeah, we made it to 5. I don't know how long more we're gonna last. We might die too. I don't know, but we're gonna keep the show going.
I got one more in me, kid.
You got one more in me. I got one more round in me.
One more round.
But yeah, we made it to 5 episodes. So thank you everybody for listening. And let's get into the show. And we're gonna start with what we've been watching this week. And for the past week, I started a new show because last week I finished Echo on Hulu, which was great. So you check that out as well. And I started a new show called Godfather of Harlem, which is streaming on Hulu. There's a couple seasons there. And I actually found out about the show because I was doom scrolling on TikTok. And a clip of the show came up. I was like, man, this is like really good acting. Like it was a scene where the main character is having an issue with like a dirty cop, and then he gets like revenge on the cop. And I was like, is this like a movie or is this like something that's coming out? And I was like, oh, it's called Godfather of Harlem. I was like, oh, I gotta watch this show. So I started watching the first couple of episodes. I watched episode 1 and 2 on Hulu. They're about an hour long each. And this show originally debuted on Epix in September 2019. I guess it got moved over to Hulu and streaming platforms. So this was co-created and co-written by Chris Brancato, who also co-created Narcos, the Narcos show. Have you seen that, Narcos,
I love
on
that show.
Netflix?
Yes, I love that show.
Yeah, it's a great show.
Pedro Pascal, actually.
Yeah, it's one of his like breakout roles that he really started in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the co-creator of that made the show, so that's kind of like, oh,
that's cool.
It's kind of going to be good.
Yeah.
Anyway, we need to see that. But what really stuck out to me with this show is like how many like great actors they have. I've never heard of this show before, so I don't know like its popularity level. But Forrest Whitaker is the main character who plays this kind of gangster named Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, who just got out of Alcatraz prison, like serving like a decade-long term. So he goes back to the streets. He goes back to Harlem in New York, which he used to run. And things have changed a little bit. Like the Italians have moved in more and they're selling like heroin and other drugs. And he's basically trying to get his feet back into the game and take over his territory. But right away in like the first episode, he's already kind of making moves and giving orders to people and stuff. So in the show, he's a little bit older than a lot of the other characters. So I think the character's probably like in his 50s. And this is actually a show based on real life events. So all these characters were real historical figures from that time. But yeah, as Forrest Whitaker's great as the main character. They also have Vincent D'Onofrio, who plays one of the guys, Bumpy's main rivals. They kind of have like a lot of friction and basically already trying to kill each other. And he plays this guy named Vincent Chin Gigante. And great acting, like tremendous, just utterly fantastic acting between the two when they're on the same screen together. And who else is in this? Oh yeah, the guy from Breaking Bad. What was his name? The bad guy in that show.
Are you talking about the man?
He ran the chicken thing.
Pollos?
Yeah. So that guy,
he's
Giancarlo Esposito, he plays like this pastor in the show, like this Christian pastor who's kind of like sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
So he's great in that show. I was like, oh, I didn't even know he was in there. And then Paul Sorvino is this guy named Frank Costello who I believe he was in like Goodfellas and stuff. So you see him on screen, you recognize him. So like the show does have some like heavy hitters in it.
Wow.
So basically the show is set in 1960s. And like I said, it's basically about Bumpy trying to get back on the streets and reclaim Harlem. And it does have like a lot of historical stuff, like Malcolm X is in the show, like as a character. So apparently Bumpy knew Malcolm, I guess when they were like in prison together or something, and then Malcolm got out and became like became Malcolm X and this political leader and stuff like that. And then like so Bumpy runs into him, they start like their friendship again. The first episode is like really tremendous. It's like fantastic. Like there's like so much drama and like really great acting, and like the scenery is great, like the 1960s style of like the cars and the fashion and like the restaurants and stuff. Like everything is like a time portal back there. Like it's just really cool to watch. And the main character, like Forrest Whitaker, he's like really likable. He's like funny. And he's always like getting out of jams and stuff. So it's like it's a really great like serious show, like with like really fantastic acting. Like I said, I finished the first 2 episodes. I'm not sure how many are in the first season, but like there's 3 seasons of the show, so I'm gonna keep working through it. And I really recommend the show, especially if you like any of those actors that I listed, or just like kind of like gangster themed shows or movies. Like this is really, really tremendous. It is pretty violent and kind of like really adult themed, so I feel like it's more than I kind of expected, I guess. But I don't know what I expected because it's about gangsters and stuff killing each other. So I don't know, but
it's been a long
like a television show.
It's been a long time since that genre has seen something like this. It's been a while, I think, right? Because there's not really that many gangster movies or anything.
Not as much, yeah. So this is really a great show, and like I said, each episode's like an hour long, so they're really jam packed with content. So check that show out, Godfather of Harlem. I'm watching it on Hulu, and the other show that I watched in the past week was Curb Your Enthusiasm season 12 episode 2 on Max or HBO Max. And basically this episode continues the story from the season premiere. I won't get into too many spoilers, but basically Larry David gets arrested for giving water to somebody waiting in line to vote in Georgia, which he didn't know. So he kind of becomes this like political hero, social figure. It's really like unintentionally like gave somebody water, and he's like he got arrested for it. So the episode 2 kind of goes through that, like he's working with his lawyer and he's like trying to like wiggle out of it, but like he's getting pressure to just like stay in the case and plead not guilty. So it kind of goes through that. There's a lot of funny stuff. Like they do like a lot of Jeff, I think his name is Jeff Green's like wife is like it's her birthday, and they're trying to get her a gift, and they're trying to like maneuver out of that too. So it's like a really funny episode. And I think I was reading online like it might be gearing towards like a Seinfeld type finale where like they all got like arrested and stuff and were in jail, which would be kind of funny. But episode 2 of this season was hilarious. and I can't wait for the episode 3 that's coming up this weekend. So definitely recommend checking that out if you like comedy or Seinfeld and stuff like that. So, but Lewis, what have you been watching lately?
So I've been watching Gen V on Prime, and this show actually premiered back in September 2023. So it's a spin-off from The Boys, which is a very popular show. So I'm gonna try to get into this without giving out too many spoilers. Based on this first episode, I am not sure where in the timeline of The Boys it takes place. I don't know if it's after season 3 or between season 1 and 2 or whatnot, but the show starts off 8 years before when the show actually takes place, right? And the main character is Marie Moreau. And as the show starts, you get into her origins and how she found out she had powers, and then you find out right away in a crazy matter how she gets these powers. Let's just say it was very bloody, very violent, and her parents did not make it when she discovered her powers. She's a blood blender. She can basically control her blood. And the show takes place in the university after this horrific accident with finding out how she got powers. So 8 years later, she's enrolled in Godolkin University. It's a superhero school where she meets new friends like Emma, for example, who also has superhero powers. She shrinks, and it's pretty cool how when she walks in, when she first meets her, she's like in a little wrestling ring, and she's like hearing this voice like, "Where are you?" You know, and it's just this little tiny girl in the wrestling ring, just having like a little sparring match with a doll. But I like this show. It's really cool. It's a very heavy show. It's very violent, very raunchy. There's a lot of nudity in this movie. I mean, this TV show. I'm sorry, and there's a lot of self harm in this. And I mentioned that because how she controls her blood, Marie, she has to cut herself, and then she can control it. It's not an easy subject to go over, right? And if someone were to, self harm and see this, I wouldn't know how they would react. And Emma, how she shrinks is by making herself throw up. That's how she shrinks, and it's just like a
So,
very very heavy show.
so basically, like the entire first episode, there's like blood squirting everywhere and puke everywhere. Is that
Yes,
basically like? Okay.
basically, yeah. And the way you find out how Emma shrinks is like this guy is obsessed with her and obsessed with her superpower, and yeah, it's just let's just say it gets very very adult, and you're just like, I don't know about this show. But that's how season 1 for The Boys was for me. There was something that happened where it was like kind of sexual assault when Starlight joined the Seven, and you just feel very uncomfortable. So I learned my lesson the first season of The Voice, where that kind of turned me off from The Voice. I was kind of like, I don't want to watch this. This is kind of like uncomfortable, but I gave it another chance and I watched the whole thing. I'm gonna stick with this. But one of the coolest things about this show is that it's not like Marvel style where it's like all color and rainbows. It's actually very dark, and you can actually see if we as people actually had powers, how we would act. And I'm gonna keep watching this. It's pretty good. I like it. It's just that there's some parts that are very uncomfortable. Uh, I wouldn't recommend this, like watching this with kids or anything like that.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this a prequel or like
Oh,
a
I'm not
spin-off or
sure.
like
From
what?
based on the first episode, I'm not sure where in the timeline it takes place because 8 years prior, when she found out she had her powers, you know, Marie just let's just say her parents didn't make it, right? And then fast forward, she's joining this university of superheroes, and it doesn't say what year it takes place. At least in this first episode, I'll have to watch the next one probably. They might give me a hint because the show is an hour long. But what's crazy, what I do love about this episode is that whenever one of her friends was trying to impress this girl, some guy bumped into him, causing um, an accident and cutting a person's throat, and blood was squirting everywhere. Marie was having flashbacks to how she found out whenever she had powers as a kid, but at least she acted really quick and saved the person's life. So I always like when stories go like, full circle. and it makes this the episode for me very memorable. I like this. I'm gonna keep watching this. I know season 4 of The Boys is coming out soon. Hopefully, this ties in with that, or we find superheroes from here and this spinoff onto that show and the main show. So I'm gonna keep watching. I'll let you know if it's worth it, because so far it's really deep. It's just very raunchy. That's all.
Is it like raunchy just for the sake of being raunchy, or does it like do you feel like it serves the purpose of the show?
It serves the purpose of the show because it shows how superheroes can be violent when they're not mature enough to master their powers. That's my opinion, though. I know some people might get like, "Oh, this is too gory. I'm going to turn this off," but it does serve the story because as a person who's watching this, seeing a child who you know found out she had her powers. I don't think it's always you had the Spider-Man story where his uncle Ben dies just with one bullet. You don't see his brain splatter everywhere, right? But this girl's origin story is so dark that her sister saw the whole thing go, and she saw the whole thing where it went wrong with her parents, and that's one thing I want to know about too. Like, whatever happened to the sister? Did something bad happen to her too because of her powers and whatnot? So that's one mystery that they kind of left open ended in the first episode. So I'll be looking forward towards this next episode this coming week whenever I watch it. But I finished 2 episodes of What If, episode 4 and 5, and these 2 episodes are kind of familiar story wise. If you've seen Thor Ragnarok and Winter Soldier, so in What If episode 4, instead of Thor crashing into the Grandmaster and Sakaar, it's Iron Man. So Tony Stark crashes into the Grandmaster's palace in Sakaar after. Do you remember the first Avengers? Whenever he's carrying that nuke on his back into space.
Yeah, yeah, kind of.
Okay, so whenever he lets go of the bomb, he falls back into the hole into Earth. But and what if he misses the hole and just falls straight into Sakaar? So basically, I kind of feel like they stole the whole plot of the race pod from episode 1, The Phantom Menace, because the Grandmaster held Tony hostage and all this, and there's a lot of people that he needs to rescue and free. So they bet on a race, kind of like when Qui-Gon, placed a bet, with what was his name from episode 1 that
Yeah,
owned
the little flying monster like
yeah.
mechanic guy.
Yeah, so he made a deal with him, like, if I win this race, you free your people. And so Tony and him make a deal. And when Tony wins this race, he tries to weasel out of the deal. But before Tony wins a race, the Grandmaster actually recruits Gamora, and Gamora's looking for Tony because she hates Tony for foiling Thanos' plans. Whenever they came to attack Earth. But anyway, so Tony convinces Gamora to, hey, you don't need to do this, let's free these people. I'm sure you've gone through this. And she has, obviously, because Thanos is not her real father. But anyway, so once they get the Grandmaster, to hand over the Sakaar, the Valkyrie, who also helped in this episode, is the new leader. And actually strikes down the Grandmaster, causing him to melt. But once Tony and Gamora leave the planet, they went to go face Thanos and take him down. So this reminded me of Thor Ragnarok. It's just you're taking the place of, you're replacing Thor with Iron Man. So it's very familiar. I liked the episode. I thought it was pretty fun. And then episode 5, it was more of like Winter Soldier, but instead of the Winter Soldier, it's Steve Rogers as the Hydra Stomper. So this is like a direct sequel to the premiere of the first episode of What If. It's parallel to the Winter Soldier movie with Steve Rogers, but instead we have Peggy in place of, Steve. And Steve is the Winter Soldier in this. He's in that big old suit from the first season. So Peggy finds out Steve is alive and confronts Nick Fury about Steve's survival. And then Natasha reveals, because she's in this as well, that Steve is being controlled by the Red Room, causing Steve to lose it and not remember Peggy because he awakens. And whenever Peggy confronts Steve, she tries to make him remember, and he can't. When he escapes, and he tries to track down Bucky and tries to kill him. And whenever Steve and Peggy start getting in the fight, because Peggy just came in time before he tried to kill Bucky, he started kind of remembering. But then, as they're fighting in the sky, Peggy knocks him out, and as they're both falling, Natasha catches them both, and then take them back to a safe house. And that's when they kind of realize, like, without this suit, Steve's gonna die. So whenever Steve awakens, he's back to his normal self and tells Peggy, "Hey, I can take you guys to the Red Room in Sokovia, and I can help you guys." And as they arrive in Sokovia, now I don't know anything about the Natasha, the Black Widow's comics, but there's a character named Melina who shows up, and she's in charge of the Red Room, and she takes over Steve again, letting Peggy know that Steve was never in control. Melina says her big plan all along was to get Peggy in the Red Room, and then this big old battle ensues, which was pretty cool. I thought the animation was really cool. And once Peggy and Steve they just start fighting. She's trying to get through him, with her love and all the same things to him, and he finally awakens. While Melina's fighting Natasha, Steve sees what's happening and then grabs Melina and just blasts off, grabbing Melina and him, taking them to the Red Room and just causing this big old explosion. I thought it was really cool. So after that, Peggy was depressed because she's like, "Oh, I lost Steve again." So yeah, I know, the never-ending love story. So once Peggy and Natasha go back to base, they kind of made a promise to each other, like, "Hey, we're gonna find Steve. I don't think he's dead. He still has that suit. So because of the suit, they still think he's alive. So they make a promise, like, let's find him." And then randomly, this portal opens, right? And Peggy just falls in, and then she wakes up to a Nick Fury and Scarlet Witch just standing over her, and they look totally unrecognizable. I guess she fell into a different universe, and apparently this next episode is supposed to be a multiverse episode. So they kind of hooked me already to keep on with this show. Which again, these 2 episodes are really good.
So yeah, it does sound pretty interesting. Is Captain America like a bad guy in this then? Because it's like a what if?
Well, it's different universes. That's the thing. But it's like, instead of Steve being Captain America, he's the Winter Soldier in this with like an Iron Man suit. It's like a big old suit. It's a Hydra Stomper. So
okay, so it's like a totally different character.
yeah, it's a totally different character. And this episode is actually a direct sequel from the first episode of the first season. So they actually are taking probably universes, and they're going to keep going on with certain, I guess, universes, like with this one.
Yeah, these past couple episodes you've been talking about do sound pretty good.
Yeah, the first 2 were not good. It was weird, And I'm glad I watched that Happy Hogan episode, because it changed my tune. And then seeing these 2 episodes, I'm like, man, I can't wait for the next one. So I don't know what happened with those first 2.
So how many are left in this season then, do you think?
I try not to go too far. I don't want to spoil myself, but I just know the next one, it's a multiverse episode for sure, because it's what if the Avengers formed in, I believe, 1602 or something, or 1642 or something like that.
Okay, it's like I know in the comics that was like a certain time period. Like there was like a Spider-Man during like the 1600s and stuff. Yeah, so that sounds cool.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to the next one. I'll let you know. I'm going to keep on with this.
All right, well, sounds good. So let's get into what we've been playing actually for the past week. I meant to start playing again Death Stranding, but I didn't get to it. So that's still a game that I'm trying to get back to. I know Lewis played it, so he's going to talk about that later. But I did play Helldivers 2 on PlayStation 5, which came out actually last Friday. Yep. And I really wasn't interested in this game per se, because I know we talked about it on a previous episode of the show during Sony's State of Play presentation a couple of weeks ago, and that was one of the games they presented. I was like, it looks all right, whatever. But then it came out and everyone was like raving about it, how like fun it is, and I was watching some clips online of people doing all these like crazy battles and explosions happening. So I was like, all right, let me get this. I know we talked about too, like getting it so we can play co-op as well.
Mm-hmm.
We did not play co-op yet.
But what's funny is this is a great story, guys. So Tim was like, "You should get it," and I go, "All right, I'll go to GameStop and buy it." And I'm like, Let me order it off the GameStop website," and it's sold out, right? I told Tim, "Yeah, it's sold out." He goes, "What? It's sold out? Just call." So I call, and they said, "Yeah, we're out of stock." And I thought that was kind of funny. I'm like, "Tim, it's out of stock." And you were gonna go to GameStop too, right?
Yeah, I figured like this game would have had more physical copies, but maybe it was just like a smaller print run or something. Because I actually went to pick up a physical copy too. I went to a GameStop and they didn't have it. I went to Target, they didn't have it. And I went to Best Buy and they didn't have it either. So I was like, just getting like frustrated. I was like, screw it. Let me just go home and download this thing. Took me like 5 seconds. I just clicked buy and it was installing. I was like, this is so much easier. But I do like to have like physical copies when I can. But this was like, I don't know. I mean, it's still listed on their websites and stuff. But I just think like the print run maybe, or they didn't just put as many copies out as like a bigger game. Because
I
this
don't
game
even.
it costs $40.
Yeah.
So it's not like a full-fledged like $70 game. It was funny when I was like waiting at GameStop, like I asked if they had it in stock, and like the woman working there was like, "Oh no, that's why we like should pre-order." I was like, "Yeah, but I didn't know ahead of time that I wanted to play this game." So like if I don't pre-order it, like I can like never buy it ever again. Like it's just like
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, I did the tutorial in Helldivers 2, which was like really funny. Um Helldivers 2 was actually like a third-person squad-based shooter compared to the first game, which came out several years ago, which is kind of like more overhead. So they kind of like changed the gameplay style, but you're basically trying to spread democracy or defend democracy and freedom, but they do it like in a very satirical way, and like there's like alien bugs that are trying to like invade and kill everybody, and they had some like really funny cutscenes and stuff in the tutorial as you're kind of working through basically just how to play the game. And once you do that, you are taken to a ship that you can name. So you can kind of select a different, you
Oh
can
my
basically
gosh.
match up different columns, right?
What did you match up?
Dude, I totally forgot. I should have written it down.
I think for me I put Lord of War. I think.
Lord of War.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they give you like a lot of options. Like it's like
Hmm.
different columns you can pick from. So anyway, when you're on this ship, it's basically like your main hub, and then you can go to like this I guess like galaxy map and kind of like where to do missions. The game is geared towards like co-op and like online play, but you can do everything single player by yourself. Because I did a couple missions by myself. Like I guess each mission has so far that I've encountered has like a 40-minute timer, and you like drop on a planet and have to do a mission like find a radio signal or investigate something or something like that. So you go to the area, kill a bunch of enemies, request landing. Doesn't take the full 40 minutes. Takes about, maybe like 5 or 10 minutes or whatever. I did find the game pretty challenging because like the enemies are pretty tough, and it's like you have like only a couple different guns. You have different like powers, like I guess like satellite powers, where you can like call down different like perks and stuff, like explosions or like ammunition or things like that. But when you do that, you have to like input like the code. So say for example, you want to drop a bomb on a bunch of like group of enemies, you have to like hit the shoulder button and then like with the directional pad like hit up down left or something, and then it calls it in. It's kind of like an interesting mechanic. I haven't seen like a lot of games do that, especially like shooters.
Reminds me of like Mortal
um
Kombat fatalities.
yeah, in a way, because you're trying to like do it, and it's kind of tough too, because like if you're like getting killed by enemies, or like you're kind of like under pressure,
Yeah.
like inputting those codes, like it's like really hard, because like if you have to do it like real time, like the game doesn't stop. um But yeah, the actual gameplay is really fun. I think the gameplay hook and the loop is going to be something that sticks with players. That's why it's been so popular with everybody.
Mhm.
And like I was saying, on this galaxy map, I think whatever you are doing missions with like contributes to the overall player total of like liberating planets and like killing enemies, because they have like a total enemy kill count
That's
on
pretty
the
cool.
galaxy map and different areas that are liberated and stuff. So it seems like you can play it single player, but you're contributing to the overall community of the game. But I think the game is more designed towards co-op as well. But they are having like a lot of server issues. Um, I think I don't know on Steam, but at least on PlayStation they are. I think they just have too many players in their servers. They weren't like anticipating this, but the play about like an hour and a half of it. Really like it. I'm gonna stick with it. Play more next week, and hopefully me and Lewis can play co-op if they flick a switch and the servers go up or something. Because I know we tried to play tonight even, and
Yeah.
your game was bugging out.
Yeah,
So
I did not wanna it's full.
it's full.
It's
Too many
crazy.
people.
Yeah, crazy.
But yeah, that's the only game I played this week that I focused on. And Lewis, why don't you get into what you've been playing?
So I played Death Stranding for a little bit. Still don't know what's going on, right? Just see this guy still, through BB's eyes for flashbacks. Still have no clue what's going on. So currently, how I'm going to approach this game, and we're going to talk about it later on in the show, with the dry PlayStation schedule on its way. I think the only way to play this game is by mission basis, because as you make deliveries, it just kind of gets repetitive and boring to me. So I have,
That's a great description. That everybody wants their game to be. Yeah, it's kind of like boring.
yeah, it's boring. It's like freaking boring. Like, I mean, I want to know what's gonna happen. I mean, I'm telling you, Kojima got us with that trailer for Death Stranding 2. I have to play this game to understand what's going on in 2. And guess what? I understand so far, nothing. So I'm gonna approach it in that regard. I'll make a delivery and then play something else, just to see.
So
Hopefully, it picks up to where it kind of makes me want to do like 10 deliveries, I guess. But
so a delivery, like how long would you say like the deliveries you're doing now? Are they like half an hour, 5 minutes?
I'd
Like what
say
are you?
half an hour, because I would run into the rain. It causes all the black liquid to come up and kind of pull
Yeah,
you.
I still don't know what that is.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know what it is, and it's
Mhm.
like I just can't imagine. Can you imagine if you're working for like Amazon, you're like delivering boxes, all these people just run out and just pull you from your destination? I'd be
Or just
mad,
like
you know?
it's like
So
black goo all over your truck.
yeah,
Like yeah,
legit. So I'm like, this is the only way I can approach it. And play music
I like.
for podcasts.
Yeah, I like in Death Stranding when like you are carrying too many like items and deliveries because you can even like find deliveries that have been like misplaced in the world, so you can like
Mm-hmm.
pick them up and then make those deliveries yourself
Yeah.
outside of like the quote unquote like main deliveries or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And if you like pack too much stuff, like it's like you got this like huge, you get like 10 boxes on your back,
And you just tip
and you got
over.
like a ladder, and you're like walking, but you're like tipping over to the left and the right. It's like kind of
Yeah.
funny,
Yeah.
and you got to hold I believe like L2 and R2 to like balance yourself.
Just balance yourself, yeah.
And if you're carrying a luggage or something like in the character's hands,
Mm-hmm.
you have to hold the button down to like
Keep
keep that
straight, yeah.
carried.
Yeah, keep straight.
So that's
So
kind
I,
of
I
weird.
actually have a vehicle right now, right? And my dilemma is hopefully the battery doesn't die. So I gotta carry more stuff to create battery charges on like generators, like in the middle of nowhere, just to make sure I don't run out of battery and be stuck with all this cargo on me. And that's a difficult thing too. So that's why I'm gonna
Right.
approach it in that regard. But also,
So
oh, go ahead.
yeah, how many hours are you at now, you think? Like
Oh
total
man, I have
gameplay or
no
whatever.
idea. I need to check on that. But it
Mhm.
feels like an eternity so far. Which again, like last time I played this game when it came out, I quit after 8 hours. Pretty sure I'm at
Getting close to it maybe.
maybe, yeah, but I'm much further than the last time I did. Um, I guess because I remember some of the things, but how to get to certain deliveries. But I'm having it's weird. I'm saying it's boring, but I'm having a better time with it currently than I did the first time. So that's the only different
Yeah,
thing.
I think because I don't know exactly all the changes they made, but like we're playing the director's cut version,
Hmm.
which apparently did update and revise a lot of things in the game to make it a better experience.
There's more enemies
Mm-hmm.
definitely than the time I originally played it. I'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
that, because I remember I made a delivery that was very close by for the first base, and I'm like, I don't remember like an enemy post out here before. So they added more enemies. I'm glad because again, I do like some drama in my games sometimes, you know, and I want to feel like I'm in danger as well. So that's one thing that I noticed different in the director's cut. But hopefully as we go along, as I go along in this game, starts to pick up. Not only in the game, but I'm just talking narrative wise too, because I want to know who this guy is that BB's seen a lot. So, well, let's see what happens by next week. But another game I played is I went back in time to the PS3. I dusted out the PS3 and I started playing The Simpsons Arcade. This game was released in
What's a PS3?
oh, it's an old device from 2006.
Right?
Oh my
Are you
gosh.
playing on the grill or the other one, the slim?
I have the grill upstairs. But wait, Phil doesn't run Sony. I would have had a grill for real.
Yeah.
I have the slim. I have the slim version. It still works. My controller still works. I was very shocked. I was charging my baseball MLB controller, PS3. I thought it wasn't gonna work, but it charged up.
Is it Doesn't the controller feel like so weird when you go
Yes, it
back to it
does.
now?
I
It
hate
feels
it.
like
I
so
hate
tiny.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
So uncomfortable.
It's
Now I
like
know why
tiny.
you hated playing Metal Gear on that.
Well, at the time, I you don't notice it, but they've had two different controllers now, PS4 and PS5. So when you go
Yeah.
back to the PS3, it's like
Oh, it's
it feels awkward.
primitive as hell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this game, The Simpsons, plays pretty good on it. It's not like that Metal Gear thing where when you have to use the directional buttons and you just feel awkward. Lucky for me,
So
the analog works for this game.
this is literally a port of the Simpsons arcade game, right?
Yes,
Right,
yes.
like the one that's been.
The
Mhm.
original came out. It was widely available on March 12th, 1991. And
Wow.
yeah, this was released in February of 2012, and they removed it from the PSN store on December 2013. I was actually able to go back and download this to my download list. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So, because I
pretty
remember we
wild.
played this back then
Hmm.
together. I think we did that, and then I do remember they removed it from the store.
Yeah, they removed it from the store, and they actually had a cool
Hmm.
development timeline flashback tab on this. I don't remember seeing this, but interestingly enough, so the game was on February 16, 1990 is when development started. And on December 17, 1990, a location test was performed in Chicago, Illinois, the first arcade cabinet. On January 21st, 91, a second location was performed in the same city. And then on the 28th of February of that year, mass production of the arcade game was complete. And then they released the US version officially on March 12th. And then, 5 months later, they released it in Japan. So apparently it's pretty cool in Japan too. So that's awesome. But the game still
Hmm.
plays great. It's fun. I was playing with my son. He had fun playing with me. He was Bart. And he was asking, why does Bart have a blue shirt? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't make the game. I was like a year old whenever this
Is
came
that
available,
is that because he's like the second player or something, or
Yeah,
just?
no, that Bart has a blue shirt in this.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
It's so
Okay.
weird,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
And I just remember the story was, Maggie gets kidnapped by Smithers, because she has the diamond in her mouth instead of the pacifier. But it's still really fun. I had a lot of fun with that. We didn't finish it, but it was just a good game to go back on, on PS3 memory lane, let's just say.
So, what made you kind of go back and play this old game?
Well, Phil doesn't have any games. That's the thing. I sold
Who's
my
Phil? Oh,
Xbox.
Phil. Yeah.
Yeah, Phil, So I do want to go back and see how games kind of hold up, today, because back then we thought they were the greatest thing in the world, 2006 games. We thought they looked great, and now they don't. But I think going down memory lane is a good thing to remind ourselves. Hey, I think we kind of have it good sometimes currently.
Yeah, but this game too, like the art style and graphic style, like it still holds up
Yeah.
because it was very like an animated style. But like a lot of those PS3 games, if it was like a regular PS3 game, they don't
Well, we
they don't look
played.
as good.
There's another game we did play for like 2 minutes, and then we just stopped because we had to do other things around the house. But we played the remake of the Turtles in Time by Ubisoft.
I
So
think that got removed
that
too.
got
I think
removed
that
as
was
well, right? So
yeah.
we
Hmm.
fired up for 2 minutes, and immediately the frame rate just started dropping. It was so bad.
Hmm.
So we were just like, yeah, let's go do something else real quick.
Because that was a newer game that was like a 3D version, right?
Yes, yeah, that was
Yeah.
totally
Hmm.
redone. And I'm telling you, when I loaded up the game, immediately you just see the lines just go down across the screen. I'm like, wow, look at that frame rate drop, nonstop.
So, how was the PlayStation Store like accessing that on PS3? Because the last time I did it was probably like a year or two ago, and it was just like the most god awful experience trying to get in there and like
Oh my gosh,
get your
just
games.
waiting to get into the store takes forever, right?
Hmm.
And I have pretty fast internet, right? Because I know once I downloaded these games, I downloaded Mega Man Legends 2, Mega Man Legends 1, and downloading them was easy. Like in 2 seconds, I got the game. But just getting to the store is ridiculous. It just takes up a lot of time. And I try to search around the store, see what else I can download, if I can purchase anything, and yeah, it's just very difficult. They have nothing there now. It's bare bones currently.
Yeah, I think the store a couple of years ago got shut down or something, or it's very limited now.
It's very limited.
But I remember too when you download a PS3 game, it doesn't install right away, so it downloads like the file and it's like a little bubble under your like game library, and you have to go in there and actually install it, which takes forever.
Yes, I had to do
Depending on
that for
the
even the
mhm,
PS1 games because I remember I downloaded Mega Man Legends, right? So I installed it, and that bubble was still there, and I had to delete it. I'm just like,
right.
why is it taking it to, I was just
Yeah,
weird.
it wasn't a good system, and like the install on that, like depending on the game size, I remember like you would just be sitting there waiting because I don't really. That's not depending on your internet speed. It's like depending on the console.
On the console, yeah.
So if you had like a full game, like a God of War, or like whatever,
It would take
Uncharted or
forever.
something, it would take forever because you just be sitting there waiting. So, um,
I,
are you
li-
gonna
I like the
mhm,
game. The store, I hate. I'll put it that way.
for The Simpsons?
Yeah, I love the game. Yeah, the game is
Hmm.
still great. If you still have a PS3, guys, and you've never downloaded this, I'm sorry. There's no other way to play it other than you find a random cabinet and a Chuck E. Cheese, probably. I don't know, because that's where I
It's like,
first played it
yeah,
as a kid at a Chuck E.
I'm
Cheese.
sorry, I'm sorry you weren't born early enough to play
Yeah,
this game.
sorry, pal.
Yeah, but this game is like, but if you really want, I mean, I think everyone should play Simpsons Arcade like at least once because it's a great game.
Hmm.
But it is basically at every like barcade. So wherever you live, if there's like a bar that has arcade machines, like they should have this game.
Yeah, they
It's a
should
it's
have
a
this game.
staple.
You know what? I think in Dallas there's this place called Cidercade, and they brew their own beers and all that, and they have a bunch of cabinet games, arcade games, and pinball machines. I think they probably do have this game.
Yeah, I see this game a lot. I think I don't know if like a Dave and Buster's and stuff would have this, but if you go to like I said, pretty much any place that has like arcade machines, like this is gonna it's still a great game, like 34 years later or whatever. Um,
Insane.
I still remember the boss fights and stuff too, like going
Yeah.
through those and fighting them. But I did not know that it was delisted though, so that sucks because
Yeah.
I
That's
probably own
crazy.
it, but I don't know. It's like I don't see them re-releasing this anytime soon.
No,
So
I don't either. It's a game of its time, and I'm just glad I can still play it.
right. So was that all you've been playing then,
Well,
or
I
just
played
those?
Helldivers
Mhm.
too, but I just did the tutorial, and I liked the game. I thought it was funny. I whenever you get done with the tutorial, you defrost in that spaceship, and you get off, and you look around. You can do missions on that globe thing. I told myself, yeah, Tim was right. Tim, we're gonna be playing this for a while, a good while. So I haven't actually played an online or done a mission. I just did the tutorial. I tried to play tonight, but I couldn't get it. I couldn't even get past the screen. Like it would just load up, and it would just say like, "Hey, our servers are full." That's it. Like, you cannot play. And I thought, is this like an internet issue? So I know there was a patch released today, right? And yeah, I couldn't get in. So Hopefully by
Ever
next week, I can give you a report, or at least me and you, Tim, where we play co-op missions. We can talk about how we killed a bunch of aliens for the name of democracy.
to spread freedom. Yeah, just you talking about like that, it reminds me of like how bad like PS3 online was. Like because we just talked about PlayStation 3, like
Yeah.
how many games were like that, like at launch, like Twisted Metal or like Rainbow Six
Oh
Vegas.
my God.
Like you would just be like waiting like weeks to play the game you bought because like there was like the PS3 was like awful for that,
Yeah.
especially that console generation.
Yeah, it
Because
was
like there was games
bad.
on Xbox too, that Xbox 360 they had the same issue, but like that console generation was just like terrible for like
Yeah,
game
but it was
launches.
just it was the beginning. It was just, I just remember Rainbow Six Vegas, you just hear the guns going off in the menu. You're like,
Yeah,
what
there
the hell's
was like
that
a
noise?
glitch in Rainbow Six Vegas, I think too, where at least on PlayStation 3, if you're like waiting, if you're playing the game, there would be like just like, these like guns going off like repeatedly because it was like some sort of error or something was going on. So you think like you're gonna about to get killed, there's just like these like sound effects going off. Like, those were the days, man.
Oh,
Kids
I
these days don't
know.
know.
Crazy. Oh man.
Um,
Resistance was great too.
yeah, for sure. Resistance. We're gonna talk about Resistance later.
Yeah.
There's some Resistance news items, but moving on to some TV and movie news. They officially announced the cast for the Fantastic Four movie, which is just called the Fantastic Four. And this movie's coming out on July 25th, 2025. Before it was going to come out in May, I believe May 2nd, but they switched the release dates with the upcoming Thunderbolts movie. So in the Fantastic Four, they have the main cast out there now. So Pedro Pascal is Reed Richard,
Hell yeah.
slash Mr. Fantastic. Vanessa Kirby, who is from, you've probably seen her in Mission Impossible. She's been in a couple movies. She was recently in Napoleon. She is Sue Storms slash Invisible Woman. And Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things. He is Johnny Storm slash the Human Torch. And the last guy is Eben Moss Bachrach. Hopefully I got his name right. He's in The Bear. So that's a recent hit show. A lot of people probably watched. And he is Ben Grimes slash The Thing. And they kind of did like a cool, really just kind of put out on social media. They had like a artwork of it, like of all the family together, but it's like a comic book style, like kind of like 1960s kind of looking. They released it on Valentine's Day, so it was like a Valentine's Day theme thing. But that's kind of how they showed the characters. They announced that. And the WandaVision director, Matt Shockman, he is making this. And people are, like I said, people are speculating that this is set in the 1960s because that's when like Fantastic Four kind of started out, I believe,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like their golden years. So they're kind of, this is like an origin story, like a reboot. It kind of makes sense for the MCU Marvel universe to have it set in the 60s. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think Pedro Pascal is great. I think he's a good choice for play Reed Richards, and yeah, I think this is going to be great. So what did you think about this news?
I love it just based on Pedro Pascal and the director of WandaVision being attached to this because I love that show as well. And seeing his
Yeah,
style,
WandaVision was really
yeah,
good.
seeing his style and that show and seeing Pedro Pascal being announced and possibly being set in the 1960s, I was like, this is gonna be amazing. I was very excited for this whenever I first seen the artwork that we all saw on Valentine's Day. Yeah, it was great hearing that. I can't wait. I'm excited.
Yeah, so no trailer yet, just kind of that art comic book style artwork, but at least we know the cast now, and this is coming out next July. And kind of going into some other Marvel news, the Deadpool and Wolverine became the most viewed movie trailer of all time. So this the trailer released last Sunday, and in 24 hours, it accumulated 365 million views, and it debuted during the Super Bowl game on Sunday. So I think that's where a lot of the kind of viewership probably came from. According to statistics, the Super Bowl was viewed by 127.3 million
Oh
people.
my
So
God.
that's how many people watched the game and were exposed to the
Is
trailer.
that the highest
But I think
rating
they're
of all
also
time?
counting, yeah. I think they're also counting like YouTube, social media, things like
Oh my
that.
God.
So the previous record was Spider-Man No Way Home in 2021 with 355.5 million. So Deadpool and Wolverine, it's pretty close to that, but they bumped it up by 10 million.
Wow.
And this movie is releasing in theaters on July 26th. And I don't know if it was done before, because this is actually the first trailer I've seen or maybe the second I've seen for the movie. But in the trailer, Deadpool calls himself Marvel Jesus. Is that new? That's a new thing,
That's
right?
a new thing, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, like, the trailer is about how Deadpool is being, it's kind of breaking their fourth wall, and how he's being kind of brought into the MCU officially, because the last couple of movies weren't, and now he's like officially in that universe. So I thought it was a really funny trailer. Ryan Reynolds is hilarious, and I think this is going to be like probably the biggest Marvel movie since Avengers Endgame. Like, I think this
You
is
didn't
going
think
to do
Guardians
like
3 was
crazy
good?
numbers. What's up?
Guardians 3?
Dude, nobody cares about that.
Nobody saw
Like that.
Guardians 3? You're lying, to.
No, I think Guardians 3 was big, but that's kind of like during like the down period of, like, I think this is going to be like, it's going to bring Marvel back up. That's what I was trying to say.
Well,
I think it's going to be like the biggest movie since Avengers Endgame, just based on all like the hype for it and stuff. I think it has the potential to like be like
so you didn't
massive.
like Spider-Man No Way Home? This was like right after Endgame.
No, but you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like that vibe that like Marvel kind of like sucks now. I think this is going to kind of start reversing some of
You
that
think
and like
so?
get people excited about Marvel again. Yeah, 'cause I think people really like Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah.
And I think them kind of doing their own thing is kind of like getting like a
I
fresh.
kind of hope he kills everybody in the universe and resets it. That's what I hope.
Mhm. Yeah, because like you mentioned, like Guardians 3, that came out, but like it really wasn't like super hyped up. I think people were already getting fatigued with like the Marvel movies, and I
But
think this is kind of like
I don't know.
an
I
exciting
disagree. I
one.
think everybody loved it. From everybody from my side over here that's watched it, they loved it. They were like, "This movie was amazing." They weren't like, "Oh, it wasn't that great" or anything like that. Everybody was genuinely happy how it ended. There weren't no
It's probably,
feelings.
yeah. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I was more like just like the overall hype and excitement.
Hmm.
I don't know, for like Marvel in general lately, it just hasn't been there for a long
Well,
time.
I mean, if you count the shows, then yeah. But I mean, Guardians was thrown in there too. Like that. That's not a bad. I think.
Yeah, because if you look at like Captain Marvel and like the Ant-Man movie and all this other, I don't know, just like people are just kind of getting like tired of these like Marvel stuff, and like even to the point where it's just oversaturated, and like even they were
Yeah,
saying like,
TV
yeah, we
shows
got to
didn't
scale
help
this
there.
stuff back. But I think this one, it's gonna reach a lot of people
Hmm.
that maybe were not really into like the Marvel stuff. I think it has like broader appeal.
Hmm.
I think it looks hilarious too. So I think it's gonna do like really, really big
I
numbers. But
can't
yeah, it's
wait.
the most viewed trailer. It's probably way more than that now, because I was like after the Super Bowl. So
Wow.
um going into the next item here, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is returning to theaters for the 25th anniversary of its original release. So this is going to be a limited screening during May the 4th weekend, which is like that Star Wars celebration, like May the Force. Instead of May the Force be with you, it's May the 4th be with you. And um, it looks like it's going to be the same movie. I don't think they're really doing any updates
Yeah,
or
George Lucas can't
different
interfere anymore,
stuff.
man.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so this original movie released on May 19th, 1999. So it's kind of lining up with the 25th anniversary, which is insane to me because I remember watching this when it came out in the theater.
Are you gonna watch this again at the theater or not?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I want to see
You
it.
wanna see it?
Um, I watched this on Disney Plus a couple years ago, I
Hmm.
think, and I was like, oh, it's like not great, but it's not like horrible.
Well, hey, I got
Um,
news here. I got news here from my end and my theater over here that you liked because of the prices. If they throw this up at my theater that we went to when we went to go see that Batista movie, um, I hope to use the new recliners they added.
just lay back and like fall asleep
Yeah,
because like the movie's
yeah.
so
Even though I
boring.
saw it already, get a good nap in.
um, but yeah, I know a lot of there's this. I don't think this movie is as controversial anymore because it's been 25 years. But when it came out, it was like very divisive.
Yeah.
But we've mentioned on the show before, like this episode 1 and those like first 3 episodes. This is basically like this is like our generation Star Wars for
Yes.
So we were just kids when this came out, so it was like I kind of have like nostalgia for it. So I'm gonna go watch it in the theater for that like kind of like movie experience, because this is different from like you don't get that same experience at home with like the sound quality and like the big screen and all that stuff. So
Right.
it's just a limited release during May the 4th. So you can check that out. And I'll include a link in the show notes to this, but they did create a new 25th anniversary movie poster
Looks
as
great.
part of like promotion for it, which is created by the artist Matt Ferguson, which is like really cool. So you can check that out. And that will be in the show notes on the website at quarterdisorderpodcast.com. And moving on to the next item here, talking about there's a lot of Marvel news this week, Marvel heavy. But Hulk will not be getting his own solo movie in the MCU, unfortunately. So this is according to Mark Ruffalo, who made the comments during a Q&A event at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival on February 11th. Basically, the gist of it, somebody asked him a question there, and he was like, I think they asked him about the new upcoming Captain America movie, and if he's gonna see it or it's coming out soon. He answered like yes, but I think he interpreted the question wrong or something like that. Like he thought like, I think they asked him, "Are you going to be in that movie?" And he said yes, but it really meant like, "Oh, well, the movie's coming out, right?" So like, he got the questions mixed up. So it kind of was like, "Whoa, okay, Hulk's going to be in this movie. He's not going to be in the next Captain America movie."
I don't
But
know,
he went
man.
on to
This guy
say,
lies a lot,
hmm?
likes to leak a lot of stuff.
I was reading about this dude. He like makes a lot of gaffes and stuff like unintentionally,
Yeah,
but he's a great actor.
yeah.
But he basically said that Hulk is going to be. I don't even think he might. I think I don't know if his contract's up or something, but he's already done like a lot of Hulk movies, so I don't know if he's going to be Hulk in the future. Totally unrelated. I'm just like bringing that up. But basically, Hulk was going to be a supporting character, and Kevin Fiji,
Feige.
the Feige, yeah, the main Marvel dude basically told him like, yeah, that's not going to happen, because he asked him like, oh, what do you want to do? He's like, well, I want to do an independent, Hulk movie, like in his own story and stuff like that. And Kevin basically told him like, yeah, that we're not doing that. So I mean, I don't know why they're so like against the Hulk like doing its own. I don't get it.
Well,
Like,
the rights are owned by Universal.
is that still the issue though?
Yes, because
I feel like that's not.
if Hulk is the main character of anything movie, it automatically Universal has the distribution rights. Not
Did they like sign like a 50-year contract with it? Like,
it's
what is going
wild. It's
on?
crazy. It's so weird because Marvel has these weird contracts where, okay, like for example, Sony with Spider-Man. So in order for them to lose a license for making the movies for Spider-Man, if they automatically stop making movies for like I think a year or two or something like that, or three maybe, those rights automatically revert back to Marvel, right? But that's why you see movies like Madam Web currently being made, like these awful movies. They're trying to keep the Spider-Man IP because that's what makes them the most money, that IP. And this contract situation with Hulk it's even worse because nothing's being made, you know. And it's gotten to a point where, in my opinion, the Hulk in the MCU is done very dirty. To me, he's like a jobber.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, he is like, because like Hulk is like in the comics. Like I love like the comics in the Hulk,
Mm-hmm.
and he should be like having his own like movie. Like there's so much potential there,
Yeah,
either with Mark Ruffalo or somebody else or whatever they decide to do. But like he's just like put in these like minor roles, and it's like, and they straight up ask him like, oh, what do you want to do? It's like, yeah, I want to make this. Ruffalo's like, I want to make a movie, like a solo movie. He's like, yeah, we're not doing that. It's not happening. It's like, so why'd you ask the
I
guy?
know,
You know what he
right?
wants
Like,
to
what do
say.
you want to
Like,
do, bro? Of course, I want my own movie. Like, what am I supposed to say? Put me as a fifth lead on Eternals. Like, that's not gonna
yeah,
be
give me a
good.
couple lines and I'm good.
Yeah.
But basically, too, there was a lot of like speculation because in the Thunderbolts movie that we mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
Harrison Ford is playing a character called President Thaddeus Ross, who's known as Thunderbolt,
Wow,
who actually can transform into like the Red Hulk.
that
So
sounds
there was like,
awesome.
well, they have if that character is going to be in the Thunderbolt movie, is like the real Hulk going to be involved and
Yeah, it's
or
true.
in the
That's very
future?
true. Damn.
So
Indiana Jones
no
is a
Hulk
Red Hulk.
movie. Yeah, I think they asked him like about that, and like Harrison Ford gave some like funny answer, like he didn't know like who that character was or something. But I think it'd be interesting. He's in that role. It's weird, but yeah, I wish they would make a Hulk movie. But I guess you got to get like the
Universal.
old movies on Blu-ray or something, or
Yeah,
from like 15 years ago.
DVD, not even Blu-ray.
Mm-hmm. So going off that, X-Men 97, the animated show, has been revealed with more details in a trailer. So this is releasing on March 20th on Disney Plus. It looks incredibly awesome, and it's basically aimed at people like in our age group, that generation who grew up on the 90s X-Men show.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a direct sequel to X-Men the animated series, which was I believe a Saturday morning cartoon show on Fox, right?
Yeah,
Was that?
Fox Kids.
And it follows that show's events. I don't remember what happened, but I guess Professor Xavier died or something, and
Yeah, I didn't remember
whatever.
that. It's just
So
crazy how the show's
we'll have
been
an
made.
article. Yeah, we'll have an article in the show notes that you can read about the full cast, because they kind of go into like who's voice acting this. But one of the voice of Wolverine's returning, Cal Dodd, and they have some other new voice actors and recast. Unfortunately, really sadly, the voice actor for Cyclops, the original voice actor Norm Spencer, he passed away a few years ago.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
So they recast him and the kind of other characters and too. But a lot of the original cast is returning. The trailer looks great. It looks like an updated version of the animation style. So I'm really looking forward to this because I loved the X-Men show when I was a kid growing up.
Yeah, same here. I can't wait.
Mm-hmm. And just a really quick thing, a new movie coming out called Sasquatch Sunset, a trailer release. So this is kind of a more off-the-wall weird movie. This is coming out April 12th, 2024, and it basically follows a Sasquatch family over a year and doesn't include any sort of verbal dialogue. So it's just kind of like animal grunts and other physical cues and stuff like that. It's starring Jesse Eisenberg, who's the main, I guess you said the main star of the movie. And this one is written and co-directed by David Zellner, who I'm really not familiar with him, but he did movies like Damsel in 2018 and Kumiko the Treasure Hunter in 2014. And he's doing this with his brother, Nathan Zellner. So this is coming out again in April. I'll probably see this in the theater because it looks kind of quirky and it's kind of like a comedy type thing. So did you see the trailer for this?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was really weird.
It's really weird,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Do you believe in Bigfoot, Tim?
The truth is out there, man. Who knows?
Yeah.
Could be.
Could be.
Could
Either
be,
that or
right?
somebody needs a
Again,
haircut.
maybe if we watch this movie, we'll find out. Maybe they'll tell us like what's
I hope so.
There'll be like a big reveal at the end of the trailer, like a post-credit scene.
Based on a true story, yeah.
Yeah, like the post-credit scene will have like that film of Bigfoot walking, but it's like shown at like a higher resolution angle.
That'd be great.
So it's like an exclusive coming out. But I think this movie looks pretty. It's an interesting movie. Like it's an interesting concept for a movie, and I think it'll be pretty good. So, but moving on to the gaming side of the news for the past week, and this is where we're going to kind of get into all the Xbox happenings that have been going on lately. And the big really news item for the week is Xbox's business update meeting that took place on February 15th, which was on what was that, Thursday, right?
Yeah,
Thursday. And basically this was a business update in a video podcast form on the official Xbox podcast platform. So this was available on YouTube and other platforms like that. I did not know they did these. This style. Apparently this is a thing they've done in the past, like a roundtable video podcast thing on their official Xbox podcast, but it's kind of like all the other stuff with Xbox, like it's just horrible marketing and communication where you don't know like half the stuff they're doing. But yeah, this was a nearly 23-minute podcast video format with the three leaders of Microsoft's gaming side, with Phil Spencer, who is CEO of Microsoft Gaming, Sarah Bond, who is the president of Xbox, and Matt Booty, who is the president of their kind of content studios first party. What was that?
Tremendous last name. You know what?
Tremendous,
I'm gonna go on record here. I'm gonna pick a last name for me. Are you ready for this?
What's
So
the
I'm
name?
gonna go with I'm gonna rename myself here. Lou Glutes. That's it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You should like copyright
I'm
that
definitely
actually.
gonna copyright that.
Yeah. Um, so this was actually announced on to take place on Monday, February 12th. So a little we talked about this pretty extensively on the last podcast episode 4. So if you want to check out that, we go into all the rumors and things like that were circulating around Xbox. Because they did not announce this meeting date the last time we did the show. So this was announced earlier this week. And this is basically in response to rumors that had leaked out. Some rumors and some internally, people within the Xbox gaming side had talked to the press about, with Xbox exclusives going multi-platform and appearing in other consoles. So there's been rumors for a couple months about smaller games like Hi-Fi Rush, and more recently like Sea of Thieves, which is a kind of community multiplayer type game. But February 4th, which was on a Sunday, is when a lot of rumors started coming out like about bigger games, such as Starfield potentially going to PlayStation 5, and also Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which is basically Xbox's biggest game this year that we know about so far. They've announced that was also rumored to be maybe more of a timed exclusive that would come to PS5 shortly after, in a shorter window. Gears of War was rumored too. People, some leaks of that, internal rumblings, maybe Gears of War was going to come to PlayStation. So all this stuff was going on, and there was just silence from Xbox. Nobody knew what was going on. Is Xbox leaving hardware? There was articles about hardware sales were down and Game Pass is down, and nobody knew what was going to happen. Is Game Pass getting canceled? Is Microsoft leaving the console space and just going third-party publishing? And basically, this is really at the end of the day, it's a result of Microsoft's lack of communication and clear messaging, that it got to the point where people were just speculating all this stuff, right? So this was a business update meeting that was actually going to take place at the end of the month. And according to Phil Spencer on this actual podcast, he said it's been planned since last December. But I think they had to bump this up in this podcast format because the rumors were just going so crazy, right? I mean, it was like they're insane. Everyone was going nuts about it. So we'll just kind of hit a couple general points, then we'll kind of talk about our thoughts about that. The takeaways from the podcast, they packed a lot of information in a short amount of time. 4 formerly exclusive games that were on Xbox and Xbox platforms are now going to go to other consoles. He didn't specifically say PlayStation and Nintendo, but that's going to be where they're going. So PS5 and Nintendo Switch. Didn't announce the actual games due to, according to Phil Spencer, I guess there's announcements that'll be taking place with those studios. They have agreements in place, so he didn't want to say. I'm assuming that these games are going to show up on like a PlayStation reveal or Nintendo Switch Direct or something like that. So maybe that's why they can't be as forthcoming, with what the games are. He basically kind of gave you enough information to kind of figure out what they're going to be. So 2 are going to be smaller scope games, and 2 are going to be service-based community games, like multiplayer games. And he did say that a lot of these games were, well, basically these 4 games specifically were games that have been on Xbox and PC for at least a year. And they did put out a press release that kind of like a blog post they do on the Xbox website, where they said, these games, quote, include, quote, hidden gems that deserve to be experienced more widely. And Phil Spencer also said these Pacific 4 games have reached their full potential on the Xbox and PC platforms. So that's a reason why they are going to be appearing on PlayStation and Nintendo. He was point blank asked by the host of the podcast, is Starfield and Indiana Jones going to be coming to other consoles? And he said no. So if you're watching that, it sounds like a definitive, okay, well, yeah, these games are secure on Xbox. But then he did an interview that was published with The Verge after the show, And he had a really interesting quote where he says, like, talking about exclusives, and they asked him, like, well, what about Starfield and all these other games? And he says, quote, I don't think we should, as an industry, ever rule out a game going to any other platform. So he's kind of talking out of both sides there, right? It's like, well, these games aren't coming out, but who knows? We might do it in the future. So it's kind of like not really a clear answer, kind of leaves it open-ended. They did announce that Game Pass is at 34 million subscribers. So this is the first time they've really given a concrete number in a long time, because they've been kind of quiet about that. And they did confirm that Game Pass is still going to be going, and it's going to be staying on Xbox consoles and Windows. So that's going to be the only places that you can be a subscriber to Game Pass and download games and play on those specific platforms. They also announced that Activision Blizzard is coming to Game Pass, which they acquired at the end of last year for an insane amount of money. I mean, it was one of the biggest acquisitions probably ever in gaming, for $68.7 billion. They've acquired those guys. So they got, all the Activision and Blizzard studios. They got Call of Duty, they got Diablo, they got Warcraft, they got so many, Crash Bandicoot, they got so many different studios and characters and stuff. But they announced that the first Activision Blizzard game that's coming to Game Pass is Diablo 4 on March 28th. So that's kind of it's a good game to come, but it's really not the point of the whole meeting. I think they just needed some positive news that they're out there.
It's Phil's favorite game.
And they did talk about,
what's that? It's Phil's favorite game.
Diablo 4 is pretty good, but they need a lot more than that to get people to hooked up. But they also announced that next generation hardware is in the works, and they also teased some sort of announcement this holiday about other hardware, potentially probably some sort of hardware refresh, different revision or something like that. There was leaks during their issues with the Federal Trade Commission last year regarding the acquisition of Activision, where some documents got out that there's two different Xbox Series versions coming out potentially, all digital versions of the powerful console, and there's different updates. It's a mid console refresh basically. So maybe that's what they're teasing. But in this actual podcast, they didn't give any information right now about what that hardware is. But they did say that as far as next generation hardware, because that was an issue people were worried about, like, is Xbox still going to be in the hardware space competing next generation? Are my games going to still be there, and things like that? And Sarah Bond said, who's, like I said, the president of Xbox, she had a quote that said, I'll just read it here, and basically teasing a super powerful next generation console. She said, and quote, and what we're really focused on there is delivering the largest technical leap you will have ever seen in a hardware generation, which makes it better for players and better for creators and the visions that they're building. So they're really kind of hammering home that we're still in this console space and our next console is going to be super powerful. And they also kind of discuss the importance of backwards compatibility and building up digital libraries, and how they're committed to making sure that people who are investing in Xbox are going to keep playing their games and have a platform for that, and still supporting the Xbox user base. And just kind of just general things to note. They kind of kept talking how while Xbox is growing and etc., they still need to grow more, and that's why they're going on other devices and other screens. It kind of just kept hammering home it was for the long-term health of Xbox. And they also framed it like, well, it's not just for Xbox. Us going to other platforms is also good for the game industry and the health of the game industry. But they did kind of continually repeat all these different keywords and buzzwords and stuff about screens and crossplay and cross save and all this other stuff that's important to them. And then did announce that Matt Booty did say that there's more than 10 major games coming to Xbox this year. And he kind of named some of them, like Indiana Jones and Hellblade and Avowed, a few others, a Diablo 4 expansion, which was a big release for that game, and they're going to be doing a Xbox showcase in June, which is their big thing for the summer to kind of give you some, I guess, unannounced games and teases and things like that. So at least in June, they're going to do another big show with games. So that's kind of some of the main points, or most of the main points of the business update in response to all those rumors, and them addressing the future of the Xbox and what people can expect for this year and then going forward. So that's kind of the hard facts of the situation of that podcast. And just wanted to get your thoughts. What was your kind of feelings watching their update, and what did you think of some of the stuff they were saying?
I don't regret selling my Xbox. That's what I got the gist of all this. I can't see myself investing any more to the Xbox brand, just based on Phil's statement about how he thinks exclusives are going to be very minimal in the coming years, and how Xbox has performed in the last 10 years under him. I think it's been pretty whack. I've been waiting this whole time. I waited, and he pretty much told me, well, I'm going to have to wait some more after this gen. And I walked away from this podcast saying, like, yeah, to me, Xbox isn't really in my cards in the future.
Right. So that point that you made, where there's going to be less exclusives, he was saying specifically about like overall in the game industry. He basically said, well, in the next 5 or 10 years from now, there's going to be a smaller number of exclusives across every platform, just because of how the game industry is changing.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't really talking about specifically Xbox, but if you kind of read between the lines, it's like, yeah, there's going to be less and less.
Yeah, but he has mentioned that he lost the gen that mattered, which was the last gen, where people built up their libraries on the PS4, right? So
yeah, he has mentioned that.
mm-hmm.
He said like basically he said last year that with the Xbox One competing against the PlayStation 4, when they lost that generation to sales and user base and things like
Mm-hmm.
that it was the worst generation to lose, because everyone just built up and bought all their games on PlayStation and just jumped to PlayStation 5.
And as a consumer,
and now Xbox is struggling.
as a consumer who's really invested in the PlayStation side, because I like their exclusives, I mentioned I had like 33 games on Xbox. Compare that to my over 400 games on Sony side. Where do you think I'm going to invest my money in the next gen? It's going to be on the Sony side.
Mm-hmm.
I've already built up that library so much, and you're telling me that, yeah, not just Xbox, but everybody's going to have minimal exclusives. I'm going to add more of that to my Sony library. I'm not going to add it on Xbox anymore. And he has mentioned that Xbox, lost during that gen for when it mattered the most, building up the digital library, which was the last gen. I think they're setting themselves up for failure. That's what I think.
Yeah, they're kind of like in a weird position, because he says these basically the 4 rumored games are Sea of Thieves, Grounded, Hi-Fi Rush, and Pentiment.
Mm-hmm.
And this is according to The Verge. So two of those games we knew about before, Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves. Pentiment we knew within the last week, because that got leaked out. So Grounded's kind of the one that's like a newer one, which is a multiplayer game.
Mm-hmm.
And he says these are being released to other consoles as a test and a learning experience, which is kind of weird, because like you bought Activision, you bought Bethesda.
Mojang.
Those games have been on multi-platform.
Mojang
You know how
Studios
those
with Minecraft.
Yeah, like how those games are going to perform. I think like he couldn't just say like, yeah, we're eventually going to be bringing a lot of our games potentially. So he's got to start with these like smaller games that
Mm-hmm.
lessen the blow, and then maybe in the future they do that. He did mention like they are still going to have Xbox exclusive games, and that this wasn't a sign that everything's going to come. To kind of like reassure people. But their whole, if you watch like the podcast, basically the theme of it is like Xbox is going to be is they're trying to get on every platform as possible and every screen as possible and every device. And even internally within Microsoft, this shift in strategy is called Xbox Everywhere. So it's not called Xbox More Exclusives. It's called Xbox Everywhere. Like they're trying to get Xbox Everywhere because I think
He's pimping out his brand. That's what he's doing.
Basically from this podcast, I didn't feel watching this from like taking a step back and watching it that there was really much to get excited about if you own an Xbox. It's basically business as usual, but over time, if you're a strictly Xbox player, there's probably going to be less exclusive games. I mean, you're still going to be able to play them, but they're also going to be on other stuff, so it kind of like lowers the value of that brand per se. And I guess the only thing that was to get excited about was like, okay, they're doing next generation hardware, which they're teasing as this like super powerful thing.
But that
But
doesn't matter, I think, because Xbox Series X is the most powerful one right now in the market, according to them, right? And they haven't done anything with it.
yeah, there hasn't been. I mean, we haven't seen the effects of that, and it hasn't helped with sales.
It hasn't helped with sales.
Most importantly,
yeah.
It hasn't caused them to jump exponentially to Game Pass numbers.
Yeah.
So basically, they announced 34 million Game Pass subscribers. And in May 2022, Microsoft had basically projected and wanted to have like 100 million Game Pass subscribers by 2030. So to really hit that target, they're on the current trajectory that they're on and the growth over year per year, they're not going to make that. It's basically stalled. We mentioned on the last show about Xbox sales and PlayStation 5 sales. PlayStation 5 sales right now, hardware wise, is lifetime sales 2-1. So PS5 just announced that they've shipped over 54 million consoles. So they probably sold around there. They officially announced that it was over 50 million. Or it came out through some, I believe, a Take-Two financial statement that PlayStation 5 was over 50 million. And, probably that put Xbox around less than 30 million, 25, 26, 27, something like that. So they are far behind Sony in that regard. And I don't see anything coming out of this business update that is going to get people excited to keep buying more. They need new people buying Xboxes. They don't need the people that already like Xbox.
Well, I think they figured that
they need
out.
those people.
They figured out they can't sell it. So what do? You port some games over and make sure the fire ain't gonna spread as quickly as it's gonna. Eventually, they're gonna start off with a little small flame with these 4 games.
I think that's the plan, and I think they're going to see how it. I don't know. Like I mentioned, it's weird. Like, we're going to see how it goes, but you already know how it goes because Bethesda releases all their games. Like, how many versions of Skyrim have there been on all these platforms?
I'm surprised it's not available for my fridge.
Right. your Xbox fridge?
Oh no, I'm talking about the real one.
The real fridge?
Yeah.
Okay. So they kind of already know. So it's basically just like, hey, we can't just straight up announce that everything's coming because then like Xbox is basically just dead.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do to increase Game Pass sales. I guess maybe just over time it's just going to grow. But they've already readjusted their internal projections for that. And, I think Activision coming to Game Pass and all those games is like great. Like it's a great value. But if you don't have the consoles, people aren't going to sign up. Right. And it's also available on PC, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Steam has all these tens of millions of players, right? PC is a big market. Game Pass is available on PC, but they haven't jumped like huge numbers with that install base, like the PC. Because you would think the number like PC players would jump on Game Pass. And probably a lot of them have. But I mean, that number is like pretty low, 34 million.
It's pretty low for what they want as well.
So what they want and what they need for the because if Game Pass was doing great and their hardware was doing great, they wouldn't be doing this like a whole business update.
So strange.
This whole dramatic thing, which really at the end of the day, this could have been a blog post,
simple tweet,
a tweet. Here's some stuff coming out. We're committed to Xbox. We have a showcase in June. We have tons of games coming out this year. Get excitement for Xbox. I don't think coming out of this, like,
I'm not excited for Xbox in the future.
no, like, I mean, I don't think they didn't really present in a way that, like,
I'll tell you what.
it's basically just like putting out the fires. Like, well, Xbox is still going to be around.
I'll tell you what.
So if you have all your,
they didn't make me regret selling the Xbox. Like,
yeah, and I think a lot of people that are still with Xbox and maybe just have the console, it's like, okay, like, well, it's good they're still committed to game preservation and doing that stuff. But as far as like getting new people on board, I don't think they're doing anything that gets people on board right now, because if I still think that exclusives drive the console space.
I think so too.
So if you have like a ton of great exclusives, people are going to buy your console, right? That's the whole thing. If all your games are on the other console too, it's like, why would you buy an Xbox?
Yeah, that's the whole point. Why would I want to buy an Xbox if I have the game you released on the PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 6 later on? I don't need an Xbox. They're going to release it on there. And that's actually bad messaging as well, because he thinks that because I play Sea of Thieves, I want to play Halo Infinite or whatever the next Halo is. It's not the same game.
No, it's not. And it's kind of funny the way they worded it. It's like, well, these games basically are dead on Xbox. Let's port them to. And Hi-Fi Rush is a great game, but it's not a game that
it's not groundbreaking, but it's a
heavy
good
hitter. It's a good game. Sea of Thieves is really popular. It's got a big community, a lot of dedicated players. Reaching the PlayStation brand is going to open that up. But it's kind of interesting. They're saying the way they're wording it, it's like, well, our games are stalling on these consoles, and they've been out for a year, so it's understandable. But when you're not being direct about, like, you're giving like flip-flop answers, like, so you're saying no, Starfield's not coming, but to other platforms, but we can't rule out anything.
Yeah, it's weird.
So it's like you're kind of leaving it open where you're kind of like in the same spot you were before all this stuff happened, really. I mean, you didn't really definitively say like this and that, and you're kind of just leaving it open, because now people are going to be like wondering, is every game going to be multi-platform?
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, hey, this is a test, it's 4 games.
As a Switch,
yes,
as a Switch owner and a PlayStation 5 owner currently, I don't regret selling the Xbox. And the way he sounded off the podcast and that interview he gave to The Verge right after or before, whenever it got published, it's pretty much
it was after. Yeah.
So it's kind of like, okay, so I shouldn't invest in Xbox anymore, because their supposed great games, their hidden gems, will eventually might end up on either or Switch or PlayStation or on Steam. It's like, why do I need to invest in Xbox for?
Right. And he basically, all three were like talking about how, well, Phil Spencer more, he was like basically trying to frame it like, oh, this isn't a new strategy because we've been doing this for years. If you've been paying attention, he kind of cited like Xbox's Play Anywhere feature, where if you buy an Xbox first party game digitally, you can play that game on PC or whatever Xbox, which they started in 2016, which is a cool feature, right? But and they also previously tried to open up like crossplay between PlayStation 4 and Xbox and all that stuff. So they were kind of pushing for that a lot. So in his mind, like, oh yeah, like if you've been paying attention, like Xbox has been moving towards that. Yeah, they have, but also this is like out of a forced necessity, because they can't compete with PlayStation or Nintendo. No. And it's kind of their own fault, because they used to be able to compete. If you look at the Xbox 360, that was like a tremendous success early on, the first several years. And then after that, they've never been able to replicate that. And
that's so funny to me.
Many different
reasons. It's really funny that you say that, because they owed a lot of money off that Red Ring of Death thing. Their most successful, their
Yeah,
most successful gen, they didn't make a single dime.
I don't know how much money they did or didn't make from that. I know that Red Ring was,
It was over $1 billion.
a disaster as far as hardware. Yeah, it was a lot, but then it's like Microsoft. I don't know how they offhand how they were calculating the loss on that, but as far as like market share and
Because
the games they were
PlayStation came
having,
back as well, and they actually overtook those numbers eventually.
they
Yeah,
did. Yeah. So what I was saying was basically like at the time and like they've never been able to replicate the first couple of
yeah.
years of Xbox 360 with the success of Xbox Live, the exclusives they had, the first party games they had, the Xbox Live Arcade, basically like from 2005 to like 2009 or
Yeah.
something like that. And they started shifting towards Connect and they started shifting towards the Xbox One, which was a disaster, just horrible messaging. You didn't know what was going on with it. And
Kind of like now, I don't know
which
what's going on with
led,
the Series X.
yeah, you don't really know. So they're in the same problem they are, but they've never been able to, if you look at the Xbox 360 sales numbers, we talked about last episode, to Xbox One to now, it's like a steep decline,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you look at the PlayStation, it's just going up. So it's like, well, why is your stuff should be going up, not going down?
Yeah,
It's
so he
like,
blamed that 19 layoffs was due to the 1900 layoffs was due to the lack of game industry growth in 2023. Bro, he needs to face facts. The guy didn't grow the freaking game library from Xbox Studios. That's the freaking problem.
so yeah, in the they he kind of was addressing the overall game industry. He was like, well, game industry didn't grow in 2023, which is funny to me because I mean the game industry did have a lot of issues last year with like layoffs and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But as far as like growing, um, I think Steam reached like the highest player count it's ever had in users. The Nintendo Switch is still selling very well. Their games are selling very well. I think Mario Wonder that came out. What was it? Over 10 million
Yeah, over
copies
10,
sold,
12
12 million
million,
or something
yeah.
like. PlayStation 5 continues to be a success, right? So it he's probably, I don't know what metrics he's looking at as far as quote unquote growth, but then he's also probably looking at it from like a Microsoft standpoint as this big company that needs to keep
He's
growing. If you don't have the growth over growth,
he's
then you're,
scrolling through Game Pass and he's saying, "Man, there's nothing on here. There's no growth."
yeah, it's a very contradictory statement because things are growing, but his Xbox business didn't
Yeah.
grow. So he had basically a quote that was like, Microsoft had to lay off these 1,900 people, which they did on January 25th because they had to make quote hard decisions about building a sustainable business for ourselves, which doesn't make any sense to me because nobody told them to spend $70 billion on Activision. And if you look at it as an overall of Microsoft, like just outside of Xbox, but Microsoft as a company, their on the day before. So the day before they did this, right? So they fired all these people on the 25th of January. On January 24th, it was the news was that Microsoft's value as a company passed $3 trillion, which they're currently the most valuable company in the world, but he's acting like they're about to go out of business. So I'm like, dude, your company made 3 trillion, like they're worth $3 trillion. Like you didn't, it's just a lot of like just speak like this was I think that irritated me the most about his podcast, the way he framed that. It was like, yeah, I had to fire these 1,900 people because we had to make hard decisions. Like that's your failure
Yeah, that's
though.
his fault.
If anybody's, it's your failure. Like why do these people have to like suffer that because of your poor
Hmm.
decisions and the company's poor decisions? If they're,
As he sits there comfortably, just yeah, it irritated me
yeah,
too.
and it's like I said, the Microsoft as a whole passed $3 trillion in value, and he's acting like they're hurting for
Yeah.
money. So it's kind of like, well, if the game industry supposedly didn't grow, and he didn't say by which metrics he was saying that by, what is he basing that
Hmm.
on? But yeah, his Xbox business didn't grow because no one's buying Xboxes, and people are not signing up for Game Pass to the numbers that they need,
Hmm.
right? But everything else, their Switch, PlayStation 5, Steam had growth, right? Game sales had growth.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really sure what exactly was the point of him saying that, especially with it just made him seem just like totally just out of touch, like, because I don't know, it didn't make any sense to me at all.
Mm-hmm.
About those layoffs. It was such a dumb response to like why they had to like let those people go.
Yeah, he's very, I don't know. It's a typical suit response, in my opinion.
Yeah. So like we mentioned, I mentioned earlier, I think they were still at the same point after the show that they are now before it.
Mm-hmm.
Because people still have questions about the future of the Xbox. I mean, even in like the intro of the video podcast they did within the first minute or two. So this whole thing is like it's scripted,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like it's not a independent podcast. It's the Xbox team asking themselves questions that they're preparing, essentially. So even in the first couple of minutes, it's like the host asking Phil Spencer, what's going on with this and what games are coming. He's like, well, I can't talk about what games are coming, right? So even like you're writing the questions and you can't answer the questions that you're writing for yourself. It's like the whole thing was just stupid. And I know why they can't say it, because they probably have maybe some contracts or business relationships that they're gonna these games are gonna come out in different ways, right? But it was like when you hear that within the first minute, it's like these guys still can't say what's going on.
Yeah, that's whenever you know that this whole podcast is like a waste of time.
Yeah, I think it was more about damage control and like trying to reassure people, and I think it's just a big kind of just like meh.
It's
Like
a
I
big
don't know.
building on fire, and they just put the fire out, and they just say, "Look, the building's still standing." That's all this was.
Mhm. And they were very adamant about saying different screens and different devices, and they highlighted Pal World as a game that released on Game Pass that was a huge success. That they kind of wanted. It seemed like they were kind of framing it like, "Oh, that's our success," but that game is just like it also sold like a gangbusters on Steam, like millions of copies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that game just kind of came out of nowhere and was like
It's
a
not a sequel or
surprise
nothing.
success,
Yeah.
right? It's not like a game like they like planned for to be like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if even like leading up to this game, I think there was a lot of skeptical people like, "Oh, Pal World, this looks like a cheap knockoff," and it turns out the game's really fun and successful. But they were like trying to take like, okay, like, we have like Pal World, and we're helping creators um, release their games in different ways through early access and retail and digital and Game Pass and all this different stuff. So trying to like reassure people like, hey, like things are going to be the same. But if things are going to be the same, they're still in the same problem. They haven't addressed the problem. Is like, how do you grow the Xbox brand so you get more? If Game Pass is going to stay on PC, Windows, and Xbox consoles, how are they going to grow
He thinks
Game
porting
Pass
port
and Xbox
he thinks
sales?
porting these 4 games is gonna do it. I don't think he's gonna do that. It's giving more an incentive just to invest more in PlayStation because Xbox games are eventually gonna end up over here. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I do think Starfield will come. I think after like a year. So
Yeah.
that just like based on it's not just like based on anything else besides just the history of Bethesda and its games releasing on everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I don't see Starfield staying on Xbox, but he's not going to come out and say that now. Indiana Jones is more interesting because that really so far is their biggest game of the year. And if they say, well, our biggest game of 2024 is, yeah, it's going to be on PS5 in less than 6 months, that kind of kills it for the Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
So they really can't say, like, yeah, it's coming out, but like, maybe they have some unannounced game at this June showcase that's going to be like super crazy that we don't know about yet. But really, going forward, from what we know, this Indiana Jones game is the biggest game of the year. So like, you would think at least that they would want to keep longer. But then he says this quote where it's like, well, everything's on the table, basically. So it's like, which one is it?
Yeah, with that
right?
statement, it
Can
just
we get like a direct
yeah,
answer?
with that statement, it just pretty much tells me that why do I need to invest in Xbox for? I mean, eventually these games are going to show up one way or the other. If not, you know, he's being very irresponsible as a businessman and irresponsible in communicating with his consumers that own an Xbox. I mean, like I said, I walked out of this podcast not regretting I sold it. This was the time to make me regret it, and he did it. And to those that still have their Xbox, you still kind of have questions like, okay, so why did I invest in this machine for then? Because he kind of made it sound like, well, these four are just the ones we're going to send over there and see. What does that tell me? If they do really good, they're going to start porting more over there.
I don't think it's good or bad. I think more are going to come
Yeah,
regardless because they, like I said, it goes back to this Activision sale of like close to like $70 billion. Like you need to make the money back,
yeah.
and they can't make the money back on their current console
Mm-mm.
user base. So what are they gonna? They're in a like back against the wall position. It's like, okay, what do you do,
Yeah, what do
right?
you
So
do?
it's like you're not growing your business, so you got to put your games on. That's why they're kind of pushing like, hey, Xbox everywhere, right? We're all friends, right? You can play Xbox everywhere, right? It's like, well, you're only doing that because you don't have a
Yeah.
choice. Like PlayStation's not like, yeah, let's put God of War on Xbox. We're all
Let's,
cool, right? We're all
let's all
friends.
hold
You're
hands and
not seeing
play
like
God of War.
you're not seeing Zelda like, yeah, we're gonna put Zelda on PlayStation because
Would would
we're
you
all
would you
buddies.
play it, Tim? Would you be?
I would buy the game if Zelda was on PlayStation. I would buy it and I would
Not play
just keep it sealed and say I'm gonna play it and I never do. That's what I would do with Zelda. But he also had some interesting stuff. He was saying, if basically paraphrasing, like he said, if we don't damage the Xbox brand and we use other platforms to grow, then it's a win for Xbox. Well, it's like you're really tiptoeing that line between damaging the brand and like success. And so far they haven't really done it well. Um, and he kept saying there's no fundamental change to how they look at their exclusives or their exclusivity plan. And he kind of had a quote about how the cloud they always talk about the cloud, right? The cloud makes it
Yeah,
them accessible
it sounds
to hundreds of millions of
it sounds
people.
like a cult, man. I'm sorry.
The X cult.
Yeah,
Um, but he was saying the cloud makes them accessible to millions of people, but it's like, yeah, hundreds of millions of people are not playing
yeah,
Xbox, so it's not working. They kind of keep saying like they have this mentality like, oh, there's all these devices or all these screens, everyone can play Xbox, but no one is.
yeah.
That's the
No one's
problem.
playing their exclusive games because, like for example, Redfall was a disaster, right? And then you got Starfield. It's boring after 20 hours. You realize it's boring after 20 hours minimum. And then you had Halo Infinite, with the co-op situation, not launching with co-op. You're like, just playing by yourself, multiplayer. Let's just say online. Yeah, Phil is either really a good actor or he's delusional.
Yeah, he does that corporate speak very
Hmm.
well, like talking out of both sides of his mouth. But he also had an interesting quote about Xbox hardware because they really wanted to make sure that you knew that, yeah, we're committed to hardware, because that was a thing that people were speculating about. Is like, is there going to be a next gen hardware, or is just Xbox just going multi-platform publishing? Um, and he said, this is the quote: "The absolute best experience somebody has on Xbox is hardware that our team builds and that people play on." But after that, he said, "But that's not going to be everybody. We've fully accepted that we're going to have Xbox players across all kinds of devices." So he's saying Xbox hardware is the best place to be, but he's like, yeah, we know we're not going to get all those people, so just play on another device. It's like, it's not something you want to. It doesn't really give you confidence in like the
Yeah,
the brand. Like, I don't
it
know.
sucks. Yeah, he's terrible, man. You're looking at your library well, me personally, I was looking at my library. I'm just like, man, Louis, you got over 430 games over here, and you only have 33 over there. I mean, really, are you gonna stick around for Xbox um 720 Series Y. I don't think it's worth it. You're over here waiting on games right now. Was that in the end you just sold the Xbox? I don't think I don't think walking out of this podcast people had faith in them. I mean, there's still people out there that are just so Xbox that they're like, oh, that's so good that we're gonna get a console next gen for sure. But then I'm gonna play those exclusive games. They think they're exclusive when they get announced a year later. After I'll add them to the PlayStation collection.
Yeah, they were really adamant about, like, they had a couple different times that they were saying, like, you know, investing in Xbox is good for the game industry. And when you invest in Xbox, you're investing in creators and things like that. So it's like they were really trying to like hammer home how their success is tied to the overall success of the game industry. And if you love it was basically kind of framing it like, if you love games, then you should support Xbox and you should support what they do. It's like, well, not necessarily, right? You're like a $3 trillion company. Like, I don't need to support you to support video games, right? Like, it doesn't. But they were trying to frame it like they're like this underdog, and they're like, we're doing this for the game industry, and we're trying to make games better. And it's like, no, you're really just trying to make more money. It's not about any of that stuff. It's very like hollow to me when they're talking about this stuff. But they really, like, so several times they're like, yeah, we're like for creators, and we're for the game industry and growing the game industry and growth and health of, like,
They're just trying to
and
figure
like,
out
well,
how to
it's not really
win.
about
That's
that.
all at this point.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I said, coming out of that, I didn't really
I'm not excited about the
think
future.
that podcast, and yeah, I didn't think it accomplished what it needed to. And there's still going to be a lot of questions about what games and what's going to happen. And really, for this console cycle right now, with the Xbox Series S, they need to start producing games. Doesn't matter what's going to happen in 5 years from now. It does, but like right now, they still have a stalling base that they need to kind of jolt somehow and get more Game Pass subscribers. And I don't know if they're going to get more console sales, but at least get some positive momentum for Xbox in some way. So this June showcase that they're going to have, they really need to have some like something cooking, right? They need to have something big
They
coming.
better not show off Hellblade again. It'll be out.
Well, it'll
I
be
know,
out
but you
by
know how they
then.
are.
Like, Hellblade Hellblade 1
Yeah.
remaster. You like the sequel, so play the first one remaster. Yeah, because they are teasing like, okay, we have major games coming out that you don't know about. So, okay, we're looking this year and next year, because even if they start porting these games, it's not going to happen tomorrow. If they port Indiana Jones, they port Starfield, they port whatever exclusives, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is probably a couple year process. So what are they going to do right now to get people even, somewhat excited about what's going on with Xbox, right? Because I mentioned this on the last show, right? Every time it feels like they do something, they kind of just kill their own momentum, or there's like a major
Oh,
goof or a
they murdered their own
miscommunication or
momentum in
something.
this podcast.
Yeah, it just, the whole mood of the podcast too, when you first watch it, like, it's like these three executives and they all look miserable. They all look like, man, we're at a work meeting, and like, I don't want to be here right now, but I have to. So there wasn't a lot of like, oh yeah, like, we're so excited for what we're going to be talking about now. I was like, all right, let's just get through this. Let's just tell you what we need to do and go from there. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens with the upcoming announcements with these games. They should be announced shortly. And, Hi-Fi Rush is probably going to be coming to PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch. And Sea of Thieves is, should be a good multiplayer game for PlayStation 5. I know it's got a pretty dedicated community. It's been out for several years. So that's a game that should reach at least new players on there. And Grounded should be a good game too, to build that community on PlayStation, that crossover appeal. But as far as like the heavy hitters, we really just don't know yet what's going to happen. But I think if a game like Hi-Fi Rush comes to Switch, it'll probably do really well with that, user base. And I think it'll do pretty good on PlayStation as well, because it's a really cool game. And it's a game that they shadow dropped on Game Pass last year. Was really one of the highlights that they had. But I don't think it led to a lot of subscribers, or definitely not console sales. That it's just not a game that's going to do that. So we'll have to wait and see for the future as far as like the major hitters. But I still expect games that are like from Bethesda and Activision. I still think like a Call of Duty is not going to be exclusive for sure, right? Is the next. They even talked about, it was kind of internally at Microsoft, is games like, the next Doom going to be exclusive because they own Doom now from Bethesda through ZeniMax Media. Is the next Doom going to be exclusive, or is it going to be also on PlayStation? Is they talk about bringing Flight Simulator over. So I don't even think they fully know their strategy of this. I think it's going to continue to evolve and change, and grow from that, whatever numbers they get. But definitely leading out of the console update that they did, I didn't feel it was enough. And I still think there's a lot of questions surrounding the long-term health of at least the console life cycle and the overall brand of the Xbox and how it continues to grow.
Good.
So we'll see where it goes from there. But moving on to the next topic here is a game that we talked about earlier in the show. And Helldivers 2, which had a simultaneous launch on Steam and PS5, as we mentioned. It launched to the highest player count for a PlayStation game on Steam, and it also sold over 1 million copies so far across both platforms. So, like I said, this was a simultaneous launch with the PS5 version. Came out on the same day. And this game is from Arrowhead Game Studios and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. And they announced it sold 1 million copies in 3 days, 3 or 4 days from the launch. So they made the announcement on February 11th. And it was the highest player count launch on Steam since God of War by over 7,000 players. And currently it still is the bestseller on the Steam charts. And this is a game that took 8 years to develop. But unfortunately, as me and Lewis had the issues too with the online server issues, the game is still having these technical issues
Is Sony
from
helping
just too many players
with the servers?
Yeah, they're working on it. It's kind of like they didn't anticipate this. I'm curious to see like what they thought their sales were going to be.
Yeah,
because they have like several 100,000 concurrent players at any time, and they sold over 1 million copies. So, Sony is helping with them, but again, it's like this is a smaller studio, kind of caught off guard by the success. So I think I think there was a story too. They're actually like hiring more developers.
Oh, wow.
And trying to get through that to boost that up. But they've had over 200,000 current players on Steam. And the developers kind of said, yeah, we've had all this success, but now we need sleep to kind of catch up. Because they've been probably just like killing themselves all this time. But really a great success, and kind of just shows you where maybe the future of games is going to be with these simultaneous releases. As on PC and PlayStation, it seems to be a success for them.
What's that meme that DJ Kali says? Instead of "we the best," it's suffering from success.
Yeah, so I think they'll fix these issues hopefully this week or next week, because you don't want to go too long because then it starts killing the community.
Yeah,
people can't connect and stuff. But
the game's fun, right? And you don't want to lose that momentum.
Yeah, it's got a lot of people hooked into it, so I think they have something here that's going to last them through the next year with updates and stuff. If they keep it up,
we can play. Well, we can play soon.
Yeah. And talking about Sony, some other big news. They had some financials and sales updates. And as far as their kind of like fiscal earnings and things like that. So overall, it's a Sony company, and they had the PlayStation news mixed in there as part of their other businesses. Some of the news coming out of that was Spider-Man 2 passes 10 million sales after just 107 days of availability. So that's really impressive. This was interesting, though. It was the only big first-party exclusive on PlayStation 5 in 2023. So they really relied on that as far as like a first from their first-party studio, because that was the only major exclusive they had last year.
From them, because they had Final
The
Fantasy 16.
Yeah, but I'm talking
from
about like,
them.
from the first-party stuff. Yeah, the first-party stuff is like where we're gonna talk about this too, where some of the issues that they potentially are having. The total PS5 sales are at over 54 million, and 54.8 million have been shipped. Monthly active users for PlayStation Network were at 123 million at the end of the quarter, up from 112 million. So they're growing.
Hey,
They're getting players.
That price increase really kicked in, right?
I don't know for the monthly active users on PlayStation Network if they're just counting people with, because you need a PlayStation account to like play your games, but you don't necessarily need to pay for PlayStation Plus to play your games. So I don't know if they're just counting the overall user base of people that have accounts and just play games, or they're counting the total paying users. But it sounds like it's just the monthly active users. So if you're signing into PlayStation Network, that's what it sounds like they're counting. So that's a lot of people.
There's a lot.
And that's probably across,
PS4.
People still have PS4s.
Well, me with my PS3.
I mean, you're hooking up your PS3. We probably got some guys out there that are trying to get their PSP on Wi-Fi in 2024. They're trying to connect to, to Sony's network, and you can't do that, right? You can't connect to Wi-Fi anymore on PSP.
I have a PSP. I don't know if the battery works on it, but I will try.
Yeah, I think the Wi-Fi and the security, it's like the PSP is so old now that current internet hardware can't. It's not compatible. Unless I think if you need like an old router or something that has like the security key for that.
That's insane.
So, but yeah, 123 million users. Unfortunately, they had some sales estimates were down. So for the fiscal year ending March 2024, they had forecasted 25 million sales of the PS5, and they are lowering that now to 21 million. So that's down by 4 million. So that's kind of a significant number of consoles they are readjusting for sales figures. And then the Sony president made some comments part of this. He's also the head of PlayStation now since Jim Ryan left a couple months ago. So he is the current Sony president is the interim president of PlayStation until I think they kind of get that all situated. But his name is Hiroki Totoki. It's a great name. He wants to bring games to other platforms to improve margins. And he was basically talking about PC releases. And that's just like they did with Helldivers 2. And he has some quotes here I'm going to read. So he said, in the past, we wanted to popularize consoles. And a first party's title's main purpose was to make the consoles popular. He goes on to say, this is true, but there's a synergy to it. So if you have a strong first party content, not only on our console, but also other platforms like computers, a first party game can be grown with multi-platform, and that can help operating profits to improve. So that's another one we want to proactively work on. I personally think there are opportunities out there for the improvement of margin, so I would like to go aggressive on improving our margin performance, end quote. So he is looking at it kind of similar to Xbox is like we need to get our games on other platforms besides the ones we own, because I think it's a larger issue in the game industry. I think just these games are just taking too long to make, and they're too expensive, and these companies are needing other avenues to increase.
But this doesn't come across as them like I want to put this on the Xbox.
Not yet. No, it's mostly PC because they've had success on that. But still, it's like before they didn't used to do that. They were kind of like against that.
Yeah, but PC is like a different.
So now they're really open to it
compared to a head-to-head competitor in the console market. I mean,
But it is interesting there if this is going to be the thing in the future where like their first party stuff is day one with PC. It's like if you're like a hardcore, I'm talking about the hardcore audience, not like you know. I mean, you're probably just going to get a gaming PC,
Well,
right?
the thing is that, I
Wouldn't
mean,
you?
here's the thing. I think if PC gamers get it, I'm not in danger with like in terms of, okay, they're releasing everything on Xbox, they're releasing everything on Nintendo. It's not the same thing because it's easy to get a console, right? Compared to building a PC per se. Do you understand where I come from?
Yeah, like the console is so
Yeah, it's so
accessible. Like
accessible, right?
gaming
So
PCs.
it's like they're not really
Hmm.
saying, "Hey, we might show up on Xbox either." You know, we're not gonna go on Xbox like our games. PC, that's fine. And I know PC, there's a lot of users on there, right? Currently, it's increasing year over year. And if a game like God of War, the next God of War shows up on day one on PC, I don't feel like I don't feel like I spent money on a PlayStation, and it's like I don't feel like how I did with Xbox because Xbox is coming out and saying, "Hey, I'm releasing 4 games on the other consoles." We already have a lot of IPs already that had come out on Sony's platforms compared to Xbox. Xbox is so dry in that exclusive department that yeah, I do feel like if um if the Halo 17 or whatever came out on PlayStation, I would feel like, hey, I spent all this money on this one console, and you're releasing it on Switch and PS5. Like, it's not the same thing though.
Yeah, I think it just shows that like it's same in the similar sense where both companies are struggling now to increase their
Hmm.
profit just in different ways. Like Xbox, like they have like major
Yeah,
issues,
and
but
Sony.
Sony, you're kind of seeing like okay, even Sony is having okay, like let's do that as well because these games just
Well,
cost too
that
much
and they
money.
probably saw the success that God of War and Horizon had releasing on the PC. And then look at Helldivers. It's
Yeah,
like we were just talking about Helldivers right now. It's done so good.
yeah, and the Sony president went on to say some of the PlayStation studios need to focus more on the business aspect of things, rather just not only the
Hmm.
creative. So he kind of has some quotes, and these are taken from videogameschronicle.com. They kind of compile these quotes. He says, "quote People who work in the studios, I have very high motivation. They're very highly motivated. They're very good people." And they have great creative minds and knowledge of live streaming. However, having said that, when it comes to the business, I think there is room for improvement, and that's to do with how to use money, the schedule of development, and how to fulfill one's accountability towards development. Those are my frank impressions. I will continue to engage in dialogue with the people so that we can find the right way to proceed. And he says his original starting quote of the kind of branches from that was, but overall growth and sustainable profitability for increasing margins, how will that translate to these goals? I don't think people understand that deeply. I think that is the problem of the organization. So he's kind of saying like, hey, we need to really figure out this money thing because yeah, you have all these great creative games, but how do we keep growing financially,
Yeah,
right? So
I mean, you kind of see that across not only just in gaming but in every other business, especially after like the pandemic. 'Cause there's some certain businesses that made a certain amount of dollars, and after everything went back to normal, their dollar wasn't the same as whenever there were only businesses kind of open when during the pandemic. So I don't know. Maybe it's just like we need to make our numbers look great on paper than like the years prior. But this does affect a lot in terms of like people being laid off, and then because they feel like, oh, we didn't make enough money, we got to lay off these people over here. So
yeah, I do think this is we're going to start seeing more of a shift towards that day one
yeah,
PC releases, and then I don't know if we'll ever see. We'll never say never, but PlayStation Studio games on other platforms. Maybe if things get really bad, but I think they're probably comfortable with this PC.
yeah. Again, I
Um,
don't feel like it's like a thing where we need to ship out on Xbox now, and it's like. it's not the same message. It's just they just want to
Mm-hmm.
see more growth on their end when it comes to the business side. And Xbox, it's just like it's everything.
Yeah, so he kind of revealed with this financial report that Sony has no major franchise games coming next fiscal year, which is April 2024 to March 2025. However, it doesn't specifically mention new IP or unannounced games they're working on. The quote is, regarding first-party software, we aim to continue to focus on producing high-quality productions and producing live service games. But while major projects are currently under development, we do not plan to release any new major existing franchise titles next fiscal year, like God of War Ragnarok and Marvel's Spider-Man 2. So, he's basically said, like, yeah, for the next year, there's no major franchise games coming that you would be familiar with. He didn't say anything about a whole new game or maybe one of their first party studios is, but I think a lot of people took it like, well, PlayStation's pretty much going to be dry after like April. And, until unless they got something cooking or they're just going to have to rely on third party games. But he just kind of came out and said, like, yeah, I don't expect anything like that until past March 2025. So that was really interesting. The PlayStation 5, at least from this year through April, they do have some really good games coming out. They have, Helldivers just came out. They have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming out at the end of the month. They have Rise of the Ronin coming out in March. And then what's that game that you're really into? The Stellar game? What's the Stellar Blade? That's coming
Don't
out in
act like you're not
April.
gonna
So
buy it,
that's
Tim.
4 games right there.
Don't act like
What's
you're not
that?
gonna buy it. You know what that is.
I don't know. I forgot the name, man. That anime stuff
Yeah.
kills me, dude. I can't
Well,
remember that.
all right. So since I got one question for you then on this dry year that's about to show up, are you gonna beat Zelda?
I will beat Zelda when it appears on PlayStation 5 through the Xbox
On Steam?
Cloud, playing it through my Nintendo Switch.
But on Steam, on the
That's
Steam
how I'm
Deck.
gonna play it. I might. Yeah, I need to get back to Zelda. I haven't. The running gag is why Lewis keeps breaking my back about this is because I have never beaten a Zelda game. Played a lot of them, got really
Yeah,
far, never beat one. So until I beat one, he's gonna keep
this
torturing
guy
me.
ain't a true gamer, guys.
I'm not true. I'm not
Yeah.
elite. I'm a
Yeah,
poser. I'm a straight poser. But yeah, I think they, there was a joke people were making online that, well, before this Xbox podcast, people were making the joke that, well, maybe Sony is just going to rely on Xbox to fill in that calendar with like Xbox ports. Because that's kind of like that really, well, it really sucks when you don't have anything coming out for a year. But again, it's not like a nail in the coffin because they could have a new game, a couple games coming out throughout that time that we don't know about. But as far as like existing franchises and things like that, they've kind of put all that out at the beginning of the generation. So we had God of War, we had Spider-Man, we had
It's
Horizon,
always that.
we had a Ratchet
It's
and
always
Clank
that
game.
kind of battle between themselves, right? Where it's like, okay, we're putting too many sequels out. When are we going to come up with something original? So let's just hope during this dry period, maybe something new might show up. But I don't know.
Yeah, I want to know what Naughty Dog's up to. I know they canceled the Last of Us multiplayer game, which they just wasted so much time on. It was like a waste of Naughty Dog. I want to know what Sucker Punch's next game is, Ben Studios. What are some of the Japanese studios up to?
Because
right?
they have a lot of studios as well.
You kind of you don't want to get into the same situation that Xbox was in, where you're going through droughts of games. But again,
I mean, they've released games. That's the one thing, and they're just saying that for a year there's possibly nothing coming on the horizon, right? So, freaking Final Fantasy VII Remake. There's 100 hours worth of stuff to do.
Yeah, but I think you don't want like a whole year.
I don't think nobody does.
Like when you don't have anything new.
We suffered that through Nintendo side whenever the Wii U came out. Xbox, we've been dealing with that 2 console cycles already. And
Phil Spencer had a quote too, like from not during this podcast, but it was during the FTC hearings where some emails got out. and he basically emailed internally like when Starfield was delayed. He's basically like, yeah, we're going over a year or 16-month period with no new first party games, and it's disastrous for us. So at the same time, Xbox was trying to build up or get back on good footing with the Xbox Series X. They had no games coming out because of delays and stuff, right? And he admitted in those emails, it's like, yeah, this is killing us. This is a disaster, right? So you don't want to get into a situation like that. I think PS5 is in a pretty
But
healthy
but the
spot,
thing
but
is, Tim, though, like, was Halo's launch a disaster? Yeah.
yeah, it was an
So
absolute disaster. Yeah,
that was the problem on Xbox's side. They had disasters at launch. Redfall, Starfield didn't stick.
yeah,
You know?
he was specifically talking about the time period on the
Oh,
calendar where there was
I
no
know,
games coming out from a
what
first
I'm
party.
saying is, at least
Hmm.
on Sony's side, they had games, and it wasn't like God of War. Oh my God, this game is terrible, or Spider-Man. Like, this game's glitchy. You know, they don't have that. Right now, we just know that nothing's coming on the horizon franchise wise. Maybe something new, who knows? But it's not the same thing as Xbox, because Xbox, they promised you the most powerful console, right? And these games were going to be amazing. And like Halo Infinite launched pretty bad without co-op, and other features were missing, right? Then Redfall was a disaster. And yeah, when Starfield finally came out, it wasn't the next big thing as they kind of advertised to us. That's why it's a disaster.
No, yeah, I think I stand by that. You can't go a year without releasing
Hmm.
something. So I imagine they have something that's going to be announced, but him coming out and saying this ahead of time, like a lot of people were like, "Oh man, there's something coming out," and it could be, if it's games are taking too long
I
to
think they are.
make. Um, they did have this Last of Us issue where the multiplayer was
Hmm.
canceled, so you got Naughty Dog tied up in this, but they are working on another game. Apparently, it's been um, kind
I
of
mean,
rumored.
Helldivers was worked on for eight
So
years. It's a long
yeah,
time.
so I do think they probably have something, but if it comes out at the end of the year that the whole year was dry, that'd be crazy. I just can't see that.
I just want to make it clear that Helldivers took 8 years to make. My son is 8 years old.
Hmm. Yeah, they should have put him in
Yeah.
the thank you for like the babies born during
Yeah.
game development. Yeah, it's interesting because I think potentially maybe Sony's having their own issues with their own first party studios.
Hmm.
And I think people were disappointed too. I saw a lot of the sentiment online, and I kind of feel the same way as far as like first party stuff that's like across all consoles really, but talk about PlayStation, new experiences that they were known for. You really haven't gotten that. Like God of War was really great, Spider-Man 2 was really great, Horizon was really great, Forbidden West, or is there Forbidden West,
Yeah,
right? That was the
Forbidden West.
sequel. But as far as like all new games that we've never seen before and stuff like that, it's kind of this generation's been kind of
Yeah, I
lacking
think
across
so
the
too.
board. I know we got like a Ratchet and Clank game, we got a Demon Souls game that was kind of I guess new, but as far as
Oh,
like
that was a remake.
what, yeah, but as far as like um
A new
something
experience
new and
now.
exciting, it's kind of
I
more the
I,
same.
I kind of feel
Hmm.
like we aren't gonna get something like that for a long time. I think there's nothing.
Right. So I think Sony was known for that for so many years as great first party games and new experiences, and now it's kind
Hmm.
of like, yeah, it's great games, but what's cooking that's new? Whereas like the new experiences, and we haven't seen that yet, and we're kind of like 4 years into this console cycle now. And it's like,
Which is
okay, we
insane.
should have started seeing some of this
Hmm.
stuff. So yeah, maybe there's issues with their management of the first party. Maybe games are taking too long. Maybe they got some stuff cooking that we're gonna know about later on this year. But it's an interesting something to keep an eye on with PlayStation. But at least for the through April, they got a game a month, two games this month, a game next month, and then something coming out in April too. So we'll see what happens. And people were kind of getting upset about, or not upset, but uh, Sony said that the PS5 was entering its quote latter half of its life cycle, and people were like, "Oh my god!" It's like, yeah, that's been 4 years. Like you were already moving into like this console generation has kind of sucked. as far as that from like first party side and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of those games. Across PlayStation and Xbox. Nintendo's been awesome. They've been killing it, but so I think it's from the two higher end consoles of what people are expecting. So people are like, "Oh, PS5 is already at the latter part of its life cycle. Like, we're going to get PS6 already." It's like, well, it's probably coming closer than it was. We're at 4 years now,
Yeah, I
so
mean,
we'll
when
see what
did the
happens.
PS3 come out? Come on, it was 2006, right? PS2 launched
PS4 was 2013.
PS4 2013. Yeah, that's. I mean, you're looking at 7 to 8 years for a cycle. I mean, should be
Mm-hmm.
midlife right
Yeah,
now. But like you said, the gen's been mid.
mid. Yeah. So that's something interesting. We're kind of pushing ahead into 4 and 5 years of these consoles, and we really haven't seen as far as like exclusive stuff. Like, okay, what are these guys
Mm,
cooking up? Like, what's what is this gen based on? What is the defining game of this gen, right?
I think Tears of the Kingdom.
But moving Tears of the King, right? Zelda, which it is, but that's
Hmm.
besides the point. But speaking of Zelda and their the console that uh, it's on, Nintendo Switch 2 rumors are getting heated up. So these are from a couple different sources. One is a Spanish source. I believe might have been on a podcast that someone did, and also a guy that seems to have pretty good credibility called Nate the Hate. He does like insider stuff.
Yeah.
Great name, right? So some of the rumors for the Nintendo Switch 2, it's going to be backwards compatible with Switch games. So I think we kind of already expected that, but just kind of get more confirmation of that. Possibly it's not going to have the Joy-Cons, like the detachable Joy-Cons that you can play on in handheld mode or with the TV. It might be more like a Steam Deck or more of those other kind of portable consoles that are out now, where it's just one straight unit. And there might be a possible March 2024 announcement of the console that's been rumored. And Video Game Chronicles.com did an article today and said that the Switch 2 is possibly launching in Q1 2025 instead of late 2024. And I guess they've talked to some internal or to some developers who have Switch 2 kits, and it's kind of like the news they've been getting that the Switch 2 might come early next year. So it's been out for a while. So I think that's the next big thing is the Switch 2. So we're probably going to get
Do
news
you
about
think
that
they'd
soon.
launch with Metro Prime?
Um, an all new Metroid Prime or one of the
One of the ones that
remasters,
they announced that it hasn't even come out yet.
which would be Metroid Prime
Yeah.
4, I believe. That would be
Yeah, I think
amazing.
that would be a solid launch title because I wouldn't do it.
They're gonna have something. They're
Yeah,
gonna have
'cause I wouldn't
something
do.
cooking.
We had Mario World Wonders that just came out, and then Zelda that just came out. I think a Metroid Prime would be excellent.
Yeah, I think they'll have that. Maybe it's a good point. I didn't
Hmm.
even think about that. Maybe definitely a new Mario
Hmm.
game. Um, Nintendo doesn't have any issues with great games, so whatever they're gonna put,
It's gonna be
it's
great.
gonna be. I think the Switch 2 is gonna be
Do you
even.
think they'll call it Switch
I
2?
think it's gonna be a. Yeah, it makes sense. You want to keep that name.
Switch U?
Makes it easier for
You think
people.
they call it
The problem. Remember the problem with the
Wii
Wii
U?
when they went to the Wii U. People were like, "What
Yeah,
is the
nobody
Wii
could
U?
tell the difference.
Like, what
Yeah,
is that?" So you want to keep
kind
it
of.
Switch 2. I think it makes sense. I think the Switch 2 is going to be more
Yes,
successful
I
than the
think so as
Switch.
well.
And so I think that's going to come soon, but
I'm
I'm
stoked.
really kind
I'm
of looking
stoked.
forward to what they have to announce. Um some game announcements for sales that we've not really sales, but just some updated figures that we've talked about recently. Silent Hill the short message passed 2 million downloads. So last time we did the show, I believe it was at 1
Hmm.
million.
It's
Now it's past
crazy.
2 million. And Konami announced that on February 11th, and the demo released January 31st. So I think I read an article somewhere. It was like, if like 2 million people downloaded it on PS5, which is a PS5 exclusive, and there's like 50 million consoles. Isn't that like 1 in 25
Yeah.
people? PlayStation owners have downloaded it, so that's kind of interesting. I forgot which place I read that. I can't remember the quote, but I didn't think of that on myself. I got that from somewhere. So, some other interesting Silent Hill news. Silent Hill 2 Remake's latest trailer doesn't represent the game, according to Blooper Team President, the studio who is actually developing the remake.
Wait a minute. Blooper or Bloober?
Bloober? I'm sorry. I
Well,
always mess these guys up.
here's
It's
the joke.
Bloober.
This guy says this whole trailer was a blooper. This ain't what represents the game.
Basically. Yeah. So the Blooper president, Peter Babino, I believe this is a Polish studio, so I think that he's a Polish guy, made the comments. The trailer was shown during Sony State of Play a few weeks ago, which was a combat-focused trailer. Konami is basically in charge of the marketing and the communication for this game because it's a Konami published games and they own the rights to it. Like I said, the trailer showed more of the combat, which people were really happy about. I don't remember Silent Hill 2 enough and the combat to make like a opinion of it, like basing it on a trailer. But a lot of people were like, yeah, this trailer sucks. And it didn't even have like a release date either, which I remember, which was weird, right? Because it's supposed to be coming out this year. But according to some, the trailer might have been an old build with outdated footage. And the Bloober president said, regarding some of the comments of negativity around the trailer, he says, quote, "I wrote those negative comments myself," Babino reportedly joked, saying, "In all seriousness, we are not responsible for the marketing side." He goes on to say, referring to Konami, he added, that is entirely the responsibility of our partner. Certainly, this trailer does not reflect the spirit of the game. It is not the spirit of either what it used to be or what we are creating now. We are trying to fully reflect this romantic vision about the game, which debuted 22 years ago. We think that when players see the real gameplay, the real game, they will judge it in a completely different way. And these quotes were taken from videogameschronicle.com. So the guy is like basically like bearing is like
he's outing
Konami
his
doesn't know what they're
partner
doing.
as being irresponsible.
Mm-hmm. Well, because if you watch the trailer, it's like you think like the developer put it out, but it's basically all Konami.
Yeah.
So they probably didn't have any say of like, okay, this is what the trailer is, what we want it to be. Because people are like really ragging on the combat and stuff. It's like, well, this doesn't represent the game. So it's like, well, that's a trailer that they're putting out for marketing purposes. So there's like a serious issue here with this game.
Really, whatever you see, like you know, whenever it's at the bottom, whatever you see on here doesn't reflect the final game. This is like the first time I think it's like for real.
I don't know. Yeah, he's making it sound like whatever they're developing, totally like it's way better than the trailer. So there just seems to be some communication issues, and like they're trying to Konami's trying to bring back Silent Hill, and now they're having issues with Silent Hill 2 Remake, where like the developer is like, yeah, that doesn't represent what we're doing. It's kind of like a weird issue there.
Maybe a casual person might not know this, but like me and you, we keep up with this stuff. If his game ends up being bad, we have to call him out on it,
Yeah, because he's basically saying like this game's gonna be great, and really, if this game sucks, like it's kind of gonna hurt.
Or if it gets
Silent
delayed,
Hill's, like, comeback
like till next year.
It's supposed to come out this year, so I don't know. PS5 exclusive too.
We'll find out.
All right, so another survival horror game with some news. Alan Wake 2 sells 1.3 million copies. So Remedy made this announcement this week, and it sold 1 million copies by the end of December 2023 and 1.3 million by the beginning of this February. It's the fastest selling Remedy game. And according to Remedy in the blog post, it says, quote, by comparison, Alan Wake 2 sold over 50% more copies and over 3 times more digital copies in its first 2 months than Control did in its first 4 months. So that's really good news. And according to them, the sales of Alan Wake 2 gave them support for the development of their other games. They go on to say the successful launch of Alan Wake 2 has supported our other game projects. Condor, Control 2, and Max Payne 1 and 2 Remake have all increased development pace thanks to the personnel release from Alan Wake 2, and we expect these projects to reach their next development stages during the first half of 2024. So great for Alan Wake 2. It deserves all its success.
Incredible.
It was my game of the year
Hmm.
for last year. What was your game of the
My
year
game of the
last
year
year?
last year? I'd say,
Yes.
well, technically, I can't say Alan Wake 2 since I beat it this year. It would have to be either Zelda or Spider-Man 2. But I think I'm gonna go ahead with Spider-Man 2 actually, just because I'm a big Venom fan.
Yeah, it's a good choice. The game
Hmm.
was really good. But if you haven't played Alan Wake 2, go download that and play that game because it's amazing. So another game we had talked about on a recent episode that you played the
Hmm.
demo of, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. So the full game came out and it sold 1 million
It's
copies.
incredible.
So this was developed and published by Psy Games, who made the announcement of the sales on February 12th. And this game came out for PS5, PS4, and Steam. And the game released at the beginning of February, and there were 114,000 players on Steam during the opening weekend. So the game seems to be
I think
doing
you'd like this
well.
game, Tim. But the anime stuff puts you off, I know.
Then, yeah, I don't know, dude. Like, are you gonna get this the
Hey,
full game?
listen to the episode, brother. I said Black Friday.
Black Friday? Yeah.
Yeah,
Seems to be doing
it's
good on
pretty good.
Steam. Another good Steam release, so that's cool. And demo you played, Lewis, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is getting patched, that demo, for graphical improvements, and it's going to add a new segment to the
Oh, I have to
demo.
play this again.
And this patch is coming out February 21st. And these same improvements are going to come to the full game later this month when it releases. So they're kind of still
Yeah,
focusing on that
I want to
demo.
make one note. Do you remember on PS4 when you played the remake, the textures in certain parts of the game? Um,
It would like be
yeah,
blurry.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's none of that in this demo, but so I don't know what they're working on. That's kind of weird, but oh well. Let's see if I spot the difference whenever I play it again, because I will play it again.
Hmm. And some news about Game Awards. So last night actually, was the DICE Game Awards, which took place in Las Vegas. And this award show is a little bit more. It's a lot more serious compared to the Game Awards, which is hosted by Jeff Keighley. That happened last
Doritos.
December. Yeah. Um, this was hosted by Greg Miller and Stella Chung, who is a media person at IGN. And they kind of opened the show with a lot of jokes. They're kind of like basically burying the Game Awards in a couple of different ways, which is funny. So they did some funny stuff, and then it was a lot more serious. Again, this is basically kind of like a real award show compared to the Game Awards. And Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year, and they won 5 awards total. And the other big winner was Marvel's Spider-Man 2, who won 6 awards, such as Action Game of the Year. So I watched some of this. Thought it was really good. I like the presentation of the developers being able to talk without being rushed off stage after
Played
20
music in the
seconds.
background. Get
Yeah, or 10 game trailers in a row, and then they give out like barely any awards and stuff on stage. So it's way better than the Game Awards. I wish this was more, I don't know, mainstream or whatever word you want to call, but or had more mass appeal. But I did like how the developers were the focus of it, and the games were taken seriously. It was just a totally different presentation and vibe compared to the Game Awards. Just a lot better. Did you watch any of this?
I just skimmed through it. Just based on what I saw, it looked more professional. It actually looked legit. I liked it.
Yeah, it's about a 2 hour show. So if you go on YouTube, you can watch it. So, but they basically just kind of keep giving awards out and have the developers come on stage and speak. So it was very well done. And something we touched base on last week is part of Steam Next Fest, which was a event on Steam between February 5th and the 12th, highlighting basically hundreds of free playable demos from independent developers mostly. I talked about some of the games I played last week, like Pacific Drive and Crypt Custodian and Harold Halibut, and just it's basically a total of 7 games I played on there. I just wanted to talk about an article I wrote for my website, timbowmanmedia.com. You can go on there. I will have the link in there. You can read my descriptions and more details about the game and where I break down my impressions of each one. But I'm really looking forward to all the games I played. Pacific Drive is coming out February 22nd for Steam and PS5, so console players can check that out. I highly recommend it. So really looking forward to a lot of those games, and those demos a lot of them are still available on Steam. If you're a PC player, you can check those out if you check out my article and want to play any of those games. And moving on to our favorite publisher game company, Embracer, right?
Oh my
Everyone loves
God.
Embracer. So it's kind of come out in a report from videogameschronicle.com, which I got the news, and a lot of other outlets have reported on this as well. But from last July 2023 to December, Embracer canceled 29 games, closed 7 studios, and cut 8% of their workforce of 1,387 jobs.
That sucks.
So they have just been like a complete just cancer to the game industry, and it's been a really negative issue with them. They announced restructuring plans in June 2023, so that's kind of what some of this was based on. They have 132 internal game studios right now, and they're working with 50 external studios. And there was a separate article and quotes that had come out from the Embracer CEO, Lars Wingfors, who basically said, paraphrasing, that the current reduction in workforce at the company and across the industry is something that everyone needs to get through. He later added that the group's strategy has been to cut the things that have, quote, the lowest chance of success going forward, and quote, to only keep, quote, the most iconic studios. And this is from an article from GameIndustry.biz, who kind of put those quotes together in the story. So this guy just seems absolutely clueless.
Yeah. F this guy.
Something that everything needs to get through, except him apparently, because he still has a job.
Guy.
So it's always like the CEOs that say that, oh, we just need to get through it. Oh, I just fired 1,000 people. Just you got to get through it. Like, this guy is not taking a pay cut. Presumably, he hasn't lost his job of like the complete mismanagement of this company.
Yeah.
Right. And it's probably not going to be the only studios that they close and jobs that they get rid of. It's probably going to, continue to happen.
Yeah, this dude's a
right?
cancer. Just like, yeah. Wow, that's too many jobs.
So he wants to only keep the most iconic studios. Then why did your company mass accumulate all these studios, right?
It's ridiculous.
And it's like the most iconic studios, the guy closed down Deus Ex game. It's like, so what is he defining as the most iconic studios in the games and stuff? Like, does he even know?
Just what he can remember, probably.
Yeah, this Embracer stuff, every time you read it, it just makes your blood boil.
It's so
every time
weird,
you hear
right?
about
this
what they're doing. Like 29 games canceled between July to December. So, and his quotes really don't do him any favors either.
The
doesn't make him like sound like a great
success going forward, and to only keep them. That's terrible. If I'm like in those other studios that don't feel iconic, I'm out of here. I gotta leave now. Look for another job.
Yeah, I feel like you're an independent studio. Like maybe you're working on a new game or something. It's like you got to be like, oh, am I in danger of losing my funding and my job? And I don't know, but it's a mess. So unfortunately, hopefully things, hopefully their restructuring plan is kind of at the tail end and more people don't lose their jobs. But like I said, I don't think these quotes from the CEO, the way he talked about is
this Phil's cousin,
the situation. No, like Phil Spencer did like whatever. Like this guy just comes across like a total like, it's like night and day. Just kind of just like really ignorant.
The guy bought a bunch of studios and laying people off. Freaking Phil bought Activision and had to let go 1,900 people. So
That's a good point. Yeah, that is. Yeah, I'm sure that Activision layoff wasn't just Phil. Like, I'm sure he had a decision in that. I'm sure that was like an overall
Hmm.
Microsoft thing. But as far as I know, Embracer CEO, I don't know if Embracer is owned by the structuring there, right?
Yeah.
So you know,
Hmm.
you know what I mean. Um, moving on to some sad news we have here. The creator of Suikoden, which was and is one of the most iconic role playing JRPG series, has passed away at 55. I'm going to try to pronounce his name here. Yoshitaka Murayama was the creator of Suikoden in the 90s, and unfortunately, he passed away recently. It was announced this week due to health issues. He created Suikoden for Konami. He was the producer, writer, and director for the Suikoden series, the early games, which include the first Suikoden, which came out in Japan in 1995 and then released in North America in 96. Suikoden 2, which was in Japan in 98 and then came to America in 1999. And his last Suikoden game was Suikoden 3 in 2002 before he left Konami that year. And he had a current game in development, which is called Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, which is deemed a spiritual successor to Suikoden. It's being published by 505 Games and launching on April 21st for all platforms. So that game is actually coming out
Man,
pretty
you get
soon.
to see it get released, and it's April 21st is like right around the corner. Yeah.
Couple months. So it's coming from his company, Rabbit and Bear Studios, which is a development team he started in 2020. And they had a Kickstarter for this game, which helped fund the development. And some of the studio, Rabbit and Bear Studios, they put out a statement. Quote, his hard work on Eiyuden Chronicles as a scenario writer was finished, but as his coworkers and friends, it saddens us to know that he won't get to see the reactions from his fans. We want to maintain his legacy and vision with this game and know that he would have wanted the rich world he has created with Eiyuden Chronicle to live on. So I guess the game has been mostly finished. So at least there,
See it to
he
the
got
end.
to
It will not.
make
Yeah.
make one last game, and whatever vision he had and uh, plan for the game is going to be in there, and it's not going to be missing any stuff or something like that. So at least that's something that can players can you know support him and remember his legacy through that game. The Suikoden games were like really. Do you remember how big those
Yeah, I
games
do
used to be?
remember. It's crazy.
Like Suikoden 1 and 2 were like huge on PlayStation 1. Suikoden 2, like I remember you couldn't even the game became like so rare. So like if you would see a copy out in the wild for the PS1, it was like $100,
I kind of wonder if
$150.
that Games to Go place has this game.
I don't know if it's. I don't know if I would. I'd be curious. I will have to look this up later. If this is those Suikoden games are still worth that much money. But I know I didn't really play them, but I know like the Suikoden franchise was known for having like a ton of characters. I think like the first game had like over 100
Oh my
playable
God.
characters, like
Yeah.
something insane, right? But it's like those classic JRPGs from the
Hmm.
90s on the PlayStation that he created, and just passed away like way too young.
Yeah, it is way
55
too
is too
young.
young. And he had his own studio. He was doing this new game. Um, definitely, I'm going to keep an eye on this game because I do want to check that out because if it's basically a spiritual successor to
It sounds
Suikoden, that
amazing,
sounds
huh?
really cool. But rest in power to him. Thanks for all the games and all the creations you made. I mean, lasting legacy with the Suikoden franchise. Still one of the main games that people look fondly back on as far as like that 90s
Hmm.
glory period, right? With like Final Fantasy and things like that. So it's up there. And he made those first 3 games. That's pretty impressive. That's really incredible. So rest in peace.
Yeah.
Rest in peace to him. And moving on to another issue here. We talked about this earlier when you mentioned PS3 games and Resistance, but Resistance Retribution, which was a PSP game, or is a PSP game, is coming to PlayStation Premium Classics, which is Sony's highest subscription tier for their PlayStation Plus model. And this is coming out February 22nd. And the game is going to have new features, which is, quote, now enhanced with up rendering, rewind, quick save, and custom video filters. And this game was made by Ben Studio, who made Siphon Filter franchise, Uncharted Golden Abyss, and recently Days Gone, which was a PS4 exclusive. This game, Resistance Retribution, released for the PSP in March 2009. And I had to look this up because I did remember some of the features. It had like interesting stuff at the time where it had PlayStation 3 connectivity with Resistance 2, where if you connected the PSP to the PS3 console with Resistance 2 inside of it, you could use the PS3 controller to play Retribution on the PSP, which is
Yeah, it's
kind of
pretty cool.
crazy, right? It was like
Yeah.
ahead of its time, right? And it also had this mode called the Infected mode, where if you connected to Resistance 2 with a USB cable, it gave you an alternative story where the main character, James Grayson, becomes infected with the Chimera virus or whatever it was, and he has new abilities and intel to find. The game did have multiplayer, which was shut down in May 2015. I don't think this game on PlayStation Premium Classics is going to have multiplayer because they didn't mention anything, but maybe it will.
I don't know.
But interesting, they're randomly bringing this game back. I'm like, if they're bringing it back, bring
No,
Resistance
Ted killed
back.
it, remember?
Do a remaster.
Ted says we're done with that.
Put a studio on it. Remaster the first 3 games with multiplayer, right?
Ted
Why
killed
not?
it.
I'm holding out for hope, man. Resistance was like my favorite franchise, or one of them at that time.
Oh yeah,
Remember
we
how
put a
much we
lot
played
of
that game?
hours, especially in Resistance 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I do hope maybe this is kind of, I don't know what makes them decide what games to put on this platform, right? Of all the games, they picked Resistance Retribution, right?
It's a really random game, yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. What's the reasoning behind that? But I actually own this game and I played it back then. Don't remember much of it, but it is interesting that it's coming to PS5 in that way. So, and the last bit of news items here, pretty cool game. Sons of the Forest is launching its full release on February 22nd. This was a survival crafting game that was in Steam early access. And the thing about this game, it launched last February in 2023 and sold over 2 million copies in 24 hours. So it was like, at one point, it was the biggest game on Steam last year. Still going to be on Steam. The game's going to cost $29.99. Currently does, and the price should stay the same. And this was a sequel to The Forest, which came out several years ago, that me and Lewis played the crap out of.
Yeah, we did.
We played the crap out of this game. It was a really creepy game. So if you're into like creepy survival horror stuff, survival games, check out Sons of the Forest. It does look pretty good. I do want to play this, but I'm waiting for console so we can play together.
I hope it stays the same price.
But yeah, $30, I doubt it, dude. It's probably gonna be like 70 by that point, but you know. But yeah, that's gonna do it for our show this week. Just want to remind everyone that if you are listening to the show, you can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, our YouTube page at Quarter Disorder Podcast, and wherever you get your podcasts from. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, basically everything. You can find those links at quarterdisorderpodcast.com or quarterdisorder.com. That'll take you to the homepage of the website where there's a podcast tab at the top of the site, and inside is links to all our social media accounts there. So give us a follow so you know when we're releasing new episodes and updates to the show. And please give us some ratings on Spotify and Apple. Leave us some reviews. It helps us get the show out there, gives us some feedback, helps the show grow. And if you have any feedback you want to leave after listening to this episode, you can leave show notes. I'll leave a comment in the show notes on the website at Quarter Disorder Podcast. That will also have links to all the news topics that we talked about. Or if you have any feedback you want to give us to us directly, you can email us. The email address is feedback@quarterdisorderpodcast.com. So thanks for listening, and we will catch you next week.